はい。
Hi, my name is Nicole Nagelli, and today I have Dorian Chow with me.
Hello.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dorian Chow. I am from Germany, south of Germany to be precise. And yeah, I'm a podcast host or like free time, like freelance podcast host, I guess, as a hobby. I'm, yeah, interviewing people from the games industry.
That's awesome. All right, here is the icebreaker question. Tell
All
us
right.
your favorite quote, but in your own words.
I think it goes something along the lines of like, if you want to change something, you need to make sacrifices.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's not from me, obviously.
Yeah, no, I know. Wow. It's
So
funny how the
smart.
tables have turned, like with your
Right.
podcast and everything. Do you want to say a little bit about your podcast, like what it's about, how you started it, and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, back in the day, I think a couple of years ago, I did research for my bachelor's thesis and my master's thesis. And then I did some interviews regarding, yeah, like game development and stuff, because I wanted to sort of always join the industry and I never really knew how to become part of the games industry. And then I did like my master's thesis about like game development and what's it called, like a cultural diversity and how it could positively impact game development. And then I thought, okay, how can I get like proper real developers to talk about this issue, or potentially how it could benefit their development cycle. And then I realized, well, these interviews are kind of cool, like this is a lot of fun, like coming up with questions and stuff. And then I afterwards I thought, well, I sort of want to be part of the industry, and then I sort of realized also, well, like nobody's stopping me to just claim I'm from the games industry. And I also think sort of everybody is part of the industry. Like, I don't really care, for my guests at least, I don't really care like if they've never made a game or anything. Like, even like the most casual person who's just watching the commercials about games or watching Let's Play or something, they're part of the industry too. They're consumers as well. And well, then I saw like this highly, highly popular interview show called Hot Ones, and I thought, like, these are such good interview questions. Like, they're throwing a lot of curveballs at the guests, and also, coming up with questions that they really feel like, wow, people did like research on the guests. And I sometimes see this with like, I don't know, like Conan O'Brien or something. Like, very rarely with big interview hosts. Very, very rarely. They just come onto the show, promote their next big thing, like, well, this is like my new movie, or this is like my new game, and like, oh yeah, like what was the inspiration behind Little Nightmares? Was it like Little Nightmares 1? It was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
No, get
never liked
out.
that. Right, yeah, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
like, and you can really feel like they're tired, like they're so tired of like
Hmm.
having to repeat the same question. And it's like, well, yeah, is there like a Little Nightmares 3 coming? I'm just like, well, at this point we will think about it, but not really yet, because I don't really want to answer this question anymore. And then
Yeah.
like an hour later, another person comes in. So when do we expect the next title in Little Nightmares? And I'm just like, oh no. So I really try to come up with questions that are also sort of like timeless in some regards. I want to have like highly specific questions about what they're currently working on, but also something like, well, I don't know, like is there something you want to get across with your games, or how do you view the process of making a game, like something fairly timeless. So this like sort of gap, like this bridge between those two areas, I think was my yeah, key inspirations for these interviews I'm currently conducting, and also yeah, hopefully in years to come.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. See, that's one of the reasons why I really, really love your interviews. And I was like, why is this dude like so underrated? Because like it's like you're really genuinely like really good at what you do. Like there's such an obvious like passion, and you get to the questions like how you were saying, the stuff that actually like makes us human, which inspired
Right.
me to start like my own stuff because I got so tired of people being like,
Yeah.
so Elsa's clothes patterns were pretty realistic, right? Is that the
Right.
future of animation? I was like, God, no, please.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so awesome. But yeah, but I'm interested. What drew you to the gaming industry specifically? What makes it different from like going into like filmmaking or whatever?
That's a good question. I think, well, back in the day, I just grew up with games. I think, like if I watched movies, like I have so many movies here. I love watching movies, but I think there's a certain interactivity that makes them more relatable in some sense. Like for example, like horror games are much more scary than horror movies for me, because like if I watch horror movies, I really get frightened from time to time. But with horror
Mhm.
games, like I recently did like a let's play on like this like tiny indie game from Taiwan, and I lost it. I'm such a scary cat. I'm just like losing it all the time, like jump scares and like noise or opening doors. Like I think there's a sort of like immersion that just gets you. But on the other hand, I think it's more also like when I listen to the music to some of the games, it's far easier to transport me back to certain moments I experienced. Like this is something I did, like not the character, like not the like for I don't know, like for example, like Natalie Portman in Black Swan. Like of course there's like a dance sequence here or something, and I can listen to the music and I feel like okay, yeah, this is like where she danced. But with some moments I have like this sort of image in my head, like all right, this is something I did, like I don't know. I shot a guy here in like this game or something, or I rescued the princess. Like something like very climactic. And I feel like this sort of accomplishment is like this sense of like, yes, I did that. This is my experiences, and this is like nobody else has the same experiences. Like this is just how I experience it, and this is how I treasure it. And this, like for example, the music is able to transport me back to these times.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. That is also like something I'm really like fascinated by, like in games, because by that way, or like in different video games, especially like the horror, like the psychological horror kind of
Right.
stuff,
Yeah.
because we're all different people, and you're like, well, I did this, then everybody comes out with their own interpretations of what just
Right.
happened, which I guess
Exactly.
you can get in film, but it's way more immersive in like video games, which is just endlessly fascinating.
Right. Yeah.
So, why do you do what you do? And I usually ask most of my artist guests this, but it's not necessarily like your story of like when I was younger, I was always playing video games, but it's
Sure.
more like what is it filling in your life? Or why do you do it when you could have done anything else? Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I think it was sort of driven because I wanted to hear these conversations. Like I saw, like when I watched the show Hot Ones, I'm just like, well, I'm glad somebody does exactly that. But then I thought, like, well, why isn't there somebody like this doing it for the people in the games industry? Like, not like I don't know who was on the show recently. Just I don't know, like what's her name? Like Elizabeth Olsen from like the Avengers movies. I'm just like, well,
Mhm.
okay, like yeah, people are going to interview her for sure. But like these people get like interviews like all the time. Like there's every new movie, like there's like a press tour, press events going out, and like
Mhm.
those people are always getting interviews. But I thought like sort of like I have this sort of like weird sentence in my head. I think like everyone deserves a good interview, in my opinion. Like I think this is like one of the key driving points, and this is also something like sure I go for the more famous people, of course, trying to get to also interview them, but I always wanted to have like this sort of balance between like, well, this is somebody I care about. I thought it was just cool, like you just like stumble across, like I don't know, even for example, like just interviewing you, for example, like I didn't have anything planned, like I never knew about like what you were doing or something, but just like me doing the research and stumbling upon your like your channel and stuff and your interview series. And I thought, wow, like this is a really cool person who is also part of the games industry. And like, I mean, just compared to Elizabeth Olsen, like I think your chances of getting interviewed by like a good interviewer are far more limited because of just like, I mean, she's like the biggest, one of the biggest actresses in the world currently.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just recently graduated. I mean, like if this ever happens, like I will be very glad to interview, of course, again. And you're always welcome back to the show. But I think like, well, sometimes people would really appreciate it just being interviewed about the stuff they do and they're passionate about. Maybe even more, like not even maybe. I think 100% more than Elizabeth Olsen, who is just like, well, this is just another gig for me. Like, it could
Mhm.
have been Vanity Fair, it could have been like Hot Ones. Like, I don't really care. But they seem so excited about this, and I sort of feel like, yeah, like everybody deserves these types of interviews, and not like the like, oh, I'm gonna interview this person, and then I'm gonna like, oh, this is like the best thing ever. Like, I don't really care. But they seem so excited about this, and I sort of feel like, yeah, like everybody deserves these types of interviews, and not like the like, oh, I'm gonna interview this person, and then I'm gonna like, oh, this is like the best thing ever. Like, I don't really care. But they seem so excited about this, and I sort of feel like, yeah, like everybody deserves okay, can you please tell us about what you're working on? So more like, hey, I
Yeah.
did research. I checked your games out. I wanted to ask about like what was it like to work on this game? Like, can you put it into words or something?
That is so fantastic. That is like one of the reasons why I like I love talking to you and like having these conversations about just because everybody that's one of the reasons why I started this work in progress series because it's not just like the famous people like how you were saying
Right,
everybody has something to say and they need to say it loudly at some point. So
right,
you might as well just help with that.
right,
It's
exactly.
very fun because I don't know. Remember how like we met like you were checking out my stuff and you were like, "Hey, your link is broken and it's going to
Right.
some lady in Germany." And I was like, "Shoot."
Right, yeah,
And that was
totally.
just it was just it's really cool to see how those relationships just develop or
Right,
how
yeah.
people support each other cuz I don't know. I guess there's this myth in the entertainment industry. Maybe it's a myth, maybe not like when it's higher up that it's so competitive, everybody's like out to kill each other or something. It's really
Right.
not, especially when you're at this level. We're all just like supporting each other because we love
Yeah,
it. Duh. But
totally, yeah.
yeah.
I think there's also this issue of like putting faces onto people, in my opinion. Like, especially in the games industry, I think there's like with some people, there's this notion of like, well, the people are just out to make money and they don't really care about this stuff. It's like, well, they just, like for example, like some of the franchises, like for example, like, I never played those games, but I think there's one series called like MLB The Show, which is like a baseball game or something. And I think I heard like an interview from years ago, or like a written interview, and people were telling me like, well, like these people only just release every year another iteration of the video game. They clearly don't care. But then like once I saw this interview, it said like, well, they have so many ideas, but they don't have the time. Like they need to release a new game by them. Like, this is like demanded by the publisher. But they care so much that they even sleep at their work. And I mean, this is horrible. You
Oh
should never
no.
sleep at your work. But just like getting across like the notion of like they really really care, even though it looked like they just released released a cheap, easy follow up to their latest game, the 2020 version, 2021 version. It's in actuality they really care a lot. And I wanted to put faces on the people. They say like, well, like he might be the writer of Little Nightmares, and he might
Yeah.
have made a decision that wasn't for you, but he really cares about other stuff as well. Like he just also talks about movies like I do, or he's not just like this like big corporate guy who just like, well, time for the money bags, and well, we
Yeah.
made it just that you hate it. So this was my goal also, to make them more human, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. I've experienced like hearing people like pitching shows and about how that goes.
Right,
Because even when you like make it to a show or something, or like even win awards for your show, your season can get like cut down just because of other executives or whatever. So it's like you might as well just like do what you can from the beginning. And a lot of
right,
stuff, that's one of the reasons why like it's like why do people focus so much on like the actors of movies when they
right.
didn't like write the movie? That doesn't make any sense. They're just doing their job, which is a very good job, but like I don't know, people people like having faces to things and I think we should do that more for like writers and different kinds of things. Because people just
Yeah,
don't know. And then they think that
yeah,
the actors are the ones, which is fine. They're
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
doing their job. But
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean, there's also this like recently there has been this huge surge in like in YouTube, or like on YouTube, of like these like visual effects artists react to something, or like a director reacts to something, or a writer. And like this was always something I loved about like the potential of like just listening to a camera guy talk about how the camera is in like the movie 1917 or something. I always thought like, well,
yeah. Oh,
I wish I could get like somebody who has like, or who's like a writer and talks about, well, this is like a structure, how this is structurally written or something. And yeah, this is something I always thought was so interesting. There was this one YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting, and he was just an editor.
yes. Yeah, yeah. I
And
watched that.
yeah, and this is like one of the people who said like, well, this is how, like he showed us how, like this is how I think. Like, when do you cut a movie? And I never thought about cutting. Like it was so interesting to see like, well, of course cuts are happening everywhere, but who is the person to say, well, this moment is now the exact time it has to be on screen, or can we add a little bit of time here? And I thought it was so interesting to see like his perspective, and it sort of changed how I view movies. Like, I mean, not always, but I try to always think about like, oh, this was interesting. And like some of the stuff the editor thinks about, I would have never thought about. And this is like some stuff I would always love to hear, like, well, this is like how a games writer like thinks about story, or this is how like a visual like concept artist thinks about the characters, because they are now like giving the illustrations that the other people turn into character models and all this stuff. So yeah, this is also the reason I wanted to get as much as a variety as possible on the show, to learn as much as possible and to have like their views onto their work.
That is awesome. That reminds me of like I've been researching a lot of like different composers and musicians and that kind of stuff, just because it's so like different from what I do. And like good music in films,
right,
when it's good, you don't even notice that it's there.
Yeah.
It's like insane. It's so cool.
Right.
I have a question about your questions. What is your favorite question to ask your guests? Or what's your favorite thing that you love to hear about?
Well, I guess this is something that goes back to the reason I also start the interview with, is there something on your mind, or do you have a topic that you prepared for the show? Like, this is something like that goes back to the things I said before. It was like, I wanted to get a glimpse into their like, it sounds scary, but like into their psyche, and like how do they think? So for example, like if they just had like a bad day at the bakery, you know, like their favorite type of bread was sold out or something, I think that makes them really, really human, because it's sort of like relatable, because like this is something I would get mad about, like just like, oh man, like this, like I wanted it, or like I misplaced my shoe or something like the reason I asked about the topics they prepared for the show. It is, I never saw any interview host, at least for the big mainstream media, that's, well, like Conan O'Brien, for example, like I never saw him just letting, like, I don't know, Jack Black was recently on the show, just came onto the show and said, well, Jack, like, is there anything you wanted to talk about? It's more like, well, the new Jumanji sequel is coming out. Well, do you have perhaps a trailer for us? Like, well, I guess I do. What a coincidence. So it was always like, well, I wanted to know what's on their mind. Like, what do they want to talk about? So I don't know, is it fear in arts, or is it, I don't know, being a writer, or being just like, I don't know, what the stuff they recently played. It's much more interesting to get like something to get them going, sort of. And it's sort of like, I guess it's an icebreaker to sort of like, get things going. And like, it's a little, it's a little teaser, but the next episode will be crazy long, because I had a person on the show and sort of let him choose what he wanted to talk about. And we sort of deviated from the topic, and then this first segment was just an entire hour.
Wow.
Yeah, and then and then I'm just like, well, so can we start the interview now after like 60 minutes of just like, and I asked him like, do you still have time? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's keep going. But it was, and this is great, it feels like the people can be themselves, and it's not like the typical answers you get. And sometimes I end up at questions or like topics like I could have never predicted. Like, I write down all the stuff, like all the notes I make, and they usually lead to good conversations. I hope. I guess this is like my goal. But I mean, if they provide all the stuff in the beginning, I don't know, we suddenly talk about like, like what it's like being a mom in game development, like, or what it's like to, I don't know, like what it's like to come to Europe and deal with the smell at Gamescom. Like how would I have thought about this? Like, do you really, like, I don't know, I would have never thought about like, well, you could just ask the guests like how horrible Gamescom smells. Like, it's a big gaming convention.
Yeah.
You might have heard of it. I'm just like, like, why would I ever ask that? It's so weird, but people seem to love it, and you can really feel the passion. It's like, wow, the smell, kill me. Like,
yeah, that's so lovely. Like, obviously, like, I've been interviewed before, kind of a lot, like obviously not as much as like celebrities or that sort of stuff.
yeah.
But your interviews was like the first time they're like, oh, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, what do I want to talk about? Yeah, it's just very, very cool. Because at first it was like, oh, is this like a homework assignment that I'm gonna have to do? But then I thought about it and was like, wait, this is actually like really smart. That's really cool. So, what were you scared of at the start of your career? Or the start of this podcast, or the start of like your career, either one is fine. And has that changed to now?
Well, I guess this is sort of like it. I think this sort of encompasses everything besides this interview. It's all related to like not being good enough, and also related to the issue of like it's very funny because I watched a YouTuber called Maximilian Dude, and he talked about his first content he ever released. He's like the biggest fighting game streamer and YouTuber. And he talked about his like very first content. It was just like, I don't know, he just like narrated some of like Call of Duty tips or something, like tips and tricks. And he sounded so bored. He was like, and he said like, well, you know, like I'm gonna be very, very clear about this. You're all going to suck in the beginning. You're all going to be horrible. Like even like it doesn't matter how much time you put into it. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're thinking right now, well, this is like pretty solid. Like this is good stuff. You can now release it. And a year from now, you will be like, this is such horrible stuff. I'm not going to curse here, but this is like it's so
family
bad.
friendly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, this is really
Yeah.
really bad. And then I went back to my first episode. I'm just like, wow, this is horrible. Like this is not really good. Like I sound so bored in the beginning, and then the questions, I'm interrupting people while they're talking, and the sound mixing is totally off, and I'm just like, wow, he was so right. And yeah, I guess this is what something like that is still in my mind to some regard. I'm just like, you know, not being good enough in the beginning. I was so nervous in my first interview, just like, you know, English isn't my native language, although I mean, I sometimes claim it is, but it is not my native language. And it's sometimes difficult to say like, well, am I up to snuff? Like, do I have a slight speech impediment? I'm sometimes stuttering a little bit, but I'm like, when I'm nervous, it's like getting more pronounced and stuff. So yeah, you know, like, can I not waste the people's time? And I guess this also goes like into my regular career where I work now, or where I worked before, or no, I recently just graduated 1.5 years ago. So I didn't get a job for quite some time, and it was like the feeling came up like am I not good enough? You know, like you put all this effort into your exams and your thesis and stuff, and then you're sort of this feeling that you graduated really really well. You have like great exam scores and stuff, but then like sort of the real world, the like not like kid's glove, I guess that's what you put it on, like where they were like there's like no hand holding, and it feels like really rough out of nowhere. And it's just like, well, you have like all these dreams and ambitions, like, well, you know, I'm going to end up in the games industry, and I'm going to be like a project manager, and I'm going to be a producer and stuff. But you know, in the end, you sometimes like, I was like unemployed for like a year or something, and it really really felt horrible, like just like not being good enough, like feeling like, well, everything you did might be good enough for you, but it isn't good enough for us. And this is like something, the feeling that goes along with like the podcast in the beginning, like not being good enough. And now it's much better. It's more like, it's still more like, can I fill the time? Can I ask the questions that people go like, oh, that's a good question? Or is it more like, well, I could have done better?
Yeah, I totally relate to that. That reminds me of something that Dave said a while back too. He said something about like how when he gets excited, like his eyebrows go all crazy, and like I also
Right,
have my
yeah.
own quirks of like whenever I get like nervous or like super like
Right.
into it, then something. But then the thing is that nobody notices, or like nobody
Right.
cares except for like yourself. So it's like now I
Oh
can
yeah.
see myself in like this tiny Zoom window, and I can see all like my manners and stuff, but likely
Right.
you're not thinking about that because you're
I know.
focused on like how you're coming across, and I'm just
Right, yeah.
focused on like, are my anglerfish earrings showing it? Like the stupidest stuff, just because like we're
Right.
human, but ultimately like, hello audience, you're just gonna be listening to like what we're saying right now and not even paying attention. So it's like,
Right.
this is just like a flesh prison. It's totally fine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, how do you come up with your questions? You mentioned hot ones. Are you inspired by any other podcasts or stuff?
Well, there's one other episode that is very similar to mine. Very, very similar. It's the Game Maker's Notebook, and it is hosted by Ted Price, who is the CEO and founder, I guess, of the game development studio called Insomniac Games, which is now part of Sony. But he does the same thing, like almost the same thing, but it's like more like I would never criticize Ted, but since I know he's like in a far higher position than I am, and I'm more like a freelancer, he sometimes doesn't get to ask the questions that are like really like sometimes a little bit harsher, like what is it like to be like what is it about racism in game development, or what about crunch in game development, some of these questions. And he sort of sometimes addresses these issues in like a very light manner, and I'm not like really complaining here at all, but it's more like he isn't able to ask the questions on tape, like, because I think it's more like, well, this is like he's a CEO and it's more difficult for him. So I'm very inspired by his interview style. It's more like I want to have a little bit more fun with my show, and they have fun for sure. And he also features like very, very high ranking guests, and I always wanted to have the mix. So I guess this is one of the podcasts I'm also very inspired by. And I guess the questions is just like, what would I like to hear, or what would I like to be asked about? And it can be sometimes very weird, like this one highly specific detail, like such a very, very like tiny detail that likely, or maybe sometimes lots of people would like to ask. Like sometimes I check the YouTube comments or something, or sometimes I play like a game, and a game they made, and ask like, well, like for example, was with Dave Mervick. You also had him on the show. There was like this like theme of meat and stuff, like lots of meat in the first game was lots of meat, like sausages and stuff.
Mhm.
And then I was like, you know what, like it's such a stupid question, but I was like, well, like, is this like a secret message
Yeah,
for
I
like
remember.
veganism or something? Like it was so stupid, but like he really appreciated it, because this is something I couldn't find out, but he was apparently, he is a vegan or vegetarian. I'm not quite sure, but he's like a vegan or vegetarian, and he talks about, well, like, well, funny you ask, it's not like really a rallying cry for veganism or vegetarianism, but there are certain elements to it that are incorporated in the messaging, in the way we want to convey emotions and stuff. So it's sometimes stupid questions that get like great answers, but it's also sometimes where I sort of like, I think there was like one interview, I can't remember which one. It was like an interview where I expected like, okay, now I've had like this long question. I had like blah 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 blah, something like, and this is like this, and then the person was just like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And I was just like just drinking, muting my mic, and I'm like, oh okay, next question. Do you like rice? So I'm just like there was there was such a stupid question. Like it was like totally random, but I was expecting like there was like a more answer, like a more long-winded answer, but it was just like this, like, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, nothing more to add. I just like to work here. I'm just like, oh, so maybe sometimes the questions I think are very good are not good, and sometimes the questions I think, man, this is just stupid. I can't ask this guy about like the sausages. Like, why would he? Like, why would they? And now it's like a running gag with me and him just asking about like the veganism topic again, and like all the little stupid hints, and to be more in the know. So I think it's like, on one hand, do lots of good research and come up with interesting questions, but on the other hand, just ask some stupid questions nobody else would ask and get great answers.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much I love that. That is so funny. Yeah, I've definitely had that experience too. The thing is, like, for each guest, I usually have like one question that is like pretty much the same. But so far, I'm not gonna reveal it because I don't want people
Sure.
to know, or I want people to look back. Can you
Yeah.
guess the question? But like, there's this one question that I asked that I always thought, like, when I wrote the question, like, people are gonna just say this one thing and then move on. But so
Okay.
far, it's been like the most interesting question because literally everybody has answered it differently, and
Oh
it's
wow.
so strange. I haven't asked you it yet.
Oh,
Maybe I
okay.
have. I don't know. You keep guessing, audience.
What going crazy now.
Yeah. How do you feel about the future? Like, do you feel more excited or scared?
Oh,
Like, just, I know it's a big question,
that's
but
a
is there
difficult
anything
question.
that like you're looking forward to, or are there parts of it that you're not looking forward to?
Well, I guess it's a sort of mixed bag. It's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, I'm very interested in seeing where things go. Like I mean, this sounds stupid and trivial, but I think it will be sort of put into perspective afterwards. Like on one hand, yes, I wanted to see like where technology goes. Like where are we going? Like, are we able to um come together as a nation, like come together as people, be more kind to each other, and also like where do games go? Like what is the future for games? Is it going to be virtual reality, augmented reality? Like all these technological questions are all stuff I care about. But on the other hand, I'm also very pessimistic regarding some issues we're currently facing. Like I don't want to be too much of a downer, but just like some of the crises we are having, just like the fishing, like fishing crisis in the sea, and global warming, like all this stuff make me very, very I don't want to say depressed, but like less optimistic about the future. So I always try to sort of balance things out, and I guess this is also some of the stuff like I wanted to do with the podcast, to sort of like have like an hour, or like maybe sometimes 2 hours, of people that they can take their minds off these things, because well, people have stuff in their life, like they are like, it might not even be like on a global crisis level, but like, you know, maybe like a presidential election, let's put it this way, or something like even more local, like I don't know, the mayor did something horrible, or like the neighbor, you know, something even more. And I think people need like to have this like sort of outlets, or like this like sort of thing that they can turn to turn their brains off. And this doesn't mean, because lots of people say like, well, you know, when I want to watch sports, I don't want to see any sort of like discussion of like politics and stuff, or movies, like keep the politics out of movies. And this is something I never agree with, because movies are political, sports are political, and also my podcast is political. So I will never shy away of asking like the tougher questions of like, well, how does it feel like to be a person of color in the games industry? So
Yeah, and that's not like political either. It's like people are. There's nothing like I didn't go through a customization thing in the beginning of my life for like I want to
right,
be that one.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, on one hand, yes, I'm pessimistic because it doesn't look too great in some regards, but I'm also optimistic about the stuff that is coming, and also the stuff I'm going to be able to do, and sort of, even like if it's just to like to sort of like keep the people's minds of these issues for a couple of hours, or maybe if I ever work on a game, couple of days, just to, you know, and even like maybe I will one day create something that people get inspired and doesn't say, well, it's true, like we need to do something better. And then I don't know, maybe this game I will ever going to do will change that or something, you know, just like a sort of mixed bag, like I said.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Is there anything, any milestone or anything that you're not looking forward to?
A milestone I am not looking forward to. Well, I mean, it's fairly simple, but I guess nobody is looking forward to dying. But I mean, it's more like I think I would be much happier if I would just be able to be less afraid. You know, it's like more like that. And I'm not looking forward to, I mean, I guess nobody's really looking forward to it. Just like, nice. Next week it's going to happen. Yeah, come on. I can't wait. The time's ticking.
Yeah.
It's more like a yes. Like I'm not like terrified, but I would be much more relaxed if I would be like, well, I accepted it. I am going to die, and we're all going to die. But it's more like a, yeah, I'm not really looking forward to it right now, because I still feel kind of young, but it's like, I mean, time is ticking away for everybody. And
yeah, that's true.
But besides that, I think there's nothing, like, because I don't have really I think there's no milestone in my life left, or like, I mean, something that I would say like, well, this is going to be horrible, like this is going to be really, really dreadful. I sort of realized with like some like personal stuff happening recently that I am able to overcome these things, and sort of much rather take things like from a more positive spin, like for example, like maintaining some things I learned, and keeping them sort of like close to the chest, like keeping them in my heart, and continuing some of the stuff I learned from people I encountered throughout my life. Like instead of just like saying, well, this is all horrible, like what happened here, and why is this happening to me, and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really saying this is wrong. Like everybody is able to do things on their own and figure things out, but it isn't helping for me. So I sort of feel like there's no real like milestone up ahead that I say, well, this is going to be really, really horrible, and I'm really afraid of it happening. I sort of think I will manage in some regards.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's good perspective on life. What do people misunderstand about you, or what do you wish that you were asked more often?
Oh, this is tricky. What I wish people would ask about me more often. That's a really good one. Well, I think it's difficult for me because I don't want to sound like too egomaniac, like just like,
Oh, it's
well,
okay. Everybody
no.
is to a certain extent. Go promote yourself. Do it.
Well, I mean, it's more like I think maybe let's put it differently. I think when sometimes people come, like sometimes I have like a couple of friends of mine who occasionally check out the podcast, but then they sort of like months later tell me like this episode was really, really stellar. I think I sort of noticed that I really, really care about this. It's not like to the extent that I mean, it's not true. I mean, it sort of is true. I wish that people would check out more of my stuff, but it's more like I don't really think about it that much. But I sort of realize that even though I'm not thinking about it, it's more like it affects me positively when they say something nice about the stuff I do, something like, the podcast and stuff. Because I try to be like sort of really, I guess, independent and do things on my own and sort of see the value in like just the guest having a good time. But then I, on the other hand, see like, well, like, I don't know, like people sharing my stuff on social media. And it's just like, well, like this feels great as well. But I'm not like really, I don't want to say I'm like afraid or like worried. I mean, I'm a little bit anxious, I guess, to see like, well, how am I able to get a bigger audience, or how can I like share this to other people? But it's not like that I'm like crushed by it or I wish people would do more. I guess there's a sort of like sense of like, I guess everyone wishes it to a certain extent, but I'm not like crushed if it's not happening. But it's more, I guess it's more like I wish people would notice my podcast more, to be more plain about it now after I realize it's just like the exposure in the end.
Yeah. No, I'm going through the same thing because usually you're just so focused on doing your work.
Right.
I didn't start these interviews to go into marketing or whatever.
Right.
If I wanted to go to marketing, I'd go into marketing. But at the same time, like I was just listening to this video last night by some YouTuber, Savannah something. She was saying like you only know about these classic books or these books just because they had a good marketing plan.
Right.
And I was like, oh, maybe I should focus on that. But it's so like annoying because like people, because you kind of hope that if I just do really good work and put it out there, it's gotta be found. But a lot of the times that's not the case, or it's but at the same time, this is something I wanted to talk to you about too. But being smaller also has so much advantages. Like you can just focus on like doing your work and doing it well, because there's no pressure of like a million people watching every move that you do, or like hate comments every few seconds or whatever. You can just focus on doing whatever. Yeah, and the same thing, like, I'm sure if you had just signed with some organization and then got to interview people through that organization, you wouldn't be able to ask the kinds of questions that you would actually want to ask. So that's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
What is the lesson that's taken you the longest to learn in your life, or maybe just with this podcast thing? Either one is fine.
It's okay to be yourself, and it's okay to be not normal, I guess. It's something like some of the stuff when I grew up was always like you were looking up to other people, like all the relatives, for example, like my cousins, for example, and then you realize, well, like with 18, like, or I mean it is here in Germany. With 18 you drive a car, with 21 you move out, with I don't know, sometimes around 20 you will have your first girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, and then you will go to the clubs, and then you will get drunk, and then you will go get a job with 17 already, because they didn't go to higher education, like they didn't go to university or like a different advanced school. And it's more like I soon realized once I like turned like around 18 that I'm just like, I don't really want to drive a car. Like driving a car is horrible. Like, I mean, it's not horrible. It's just like, it's boring. I don't really care about it. I don't want to drive a car. And then also going to the club is, I mean, it's not garbage, but it's more like it's so hyped in our culture, and like getting drunk is so cool. I'm just like,
Yeah.
this tastes horrible. What are you talking about? Like, beer is disgusting. I sometimes try it again, but it's like still to this day I can't drink beer. It's just horrible. And I'm like, all this stuff is like so, like, we're so used to talking about this. Like, well, yeah, when you're 18, you're going to the clubs, and then you're going to get drunk and stuff. I'm more like, wow, this is so bad, and everybody's hyping it up so much, and I'm just like, it's okay to say no. And then I realized, I think this came later, but then like I recently, like not recently, a couple of years ago, I stopped drinking alcohol. I'm just like, not like that I hate alcohol. It's not like that I'm just like, well, nobody should ever drink. I think drinking is totally fine. Like, I think it's kind of, it's also sometimes it's great part to be like of a culture, or sometimes if it's too crazy, it's not really my type of beer, but it's fine. Like but I realized it's okay to just go to the club and drink water, because I realized, well, I'm not really, like, maybe it's my Asian blood or something. It's not really doing me too good during the night, and then next morning you feel sort of hungover. So I'm more like, well, I guess that's not doing it for me. So I just said, I guess I don't need to drink it. Like, it's not normal in the sense of like, because it's this is like part of some of other stuff. People ask me like, well, okay, like do you like to drink alcohol? And it's like, no, I just don't drink alcohol. It's like, oh, so you're against alcohol? And I'm just, no, not really. So, and everybody's like really confused about like me not like drinking alcohol, because they sort of think like, oh, you're allergic or something. I'm just like, no, I don't care. And then I sort of realized like, it's just fine to be like, to say like, no, I'm not drinking. And it's not like that I feel afraid of the alcohol or something. It's more like I don't care about it. And I guess this is the lesson. Like, just be you. And also you thought like, I mean, not you, but I mean, I thought I had to be a certain type of person to anything, get a girlfriend, meet friends, get into a job. And it's funny because I stopped trying to fit in, and I realized that I have like lots of cool friends who are just like, well, like, we always knew you like this, but you sort of tried to be more normal during work or doing this and stuff. So I just stopped to do this all together. And it's so interesting to see, because I sometimes feel like when I'm at work, or not work specifically, but like something like podcasting or stuff, like, once I'm just me, I think everybody appreciates it more. I'm more interesting. I can do more stuff, and it feels more like I don't know, like, how do you put it? It's more like I could try to pretend to be somebody else, or to be more normal, to be more like in line with what everybody else is. And then I would be like 50% of myself, or I could just be 100% myself, and then realize, well, the people really like the 100% of that I am. And then I made like great friends, and I also have like way more fun than before, because like hanging out with the people who are just friends with me because I'm 50% normal like them. I don't know. Those are boring. Like, I don't care about them. I never had to do like, I never talk with them anymore afterwards, and it's more like, I don't really care. So I guess, be you, be confident in yourself, even though it took me some time to just realize, no thanks, I don't care. And I guess this was so helpful, because in the end, I got a job because I was myself. I did the podcast because I was myself. I made many friends. I have a girlfriend because I was myself. In the end, it's all about you. And I'm certain that there's people for everybody out there, friends, like, just be you. There's nothing wrong with you. And there's no standard in behavior, no standard in beauty. I mean, there is, but there shouldn't be. And you are enough, it's still like, after everything, it's still you, and you're fine. You're always fine.
Wow, that is really nice advice. I love that a lot. Yeah, that's such like a strange part of like growing up and stuff.
Yeah.
That's very I like the way that I'm kind of relating to it right now is just like I just started skateboarding recently, and I've just been watching people like go without helmets and like without pads and stuff, and I'm a beginner,
Right.
so I'm obviously like all marshmallow manned up.
Right,
But
yeah.
it's really interesting to see like how skateboarding is supposed to be like going against the norm or whatever, or
Right.
not caring what people think. Yet most people care about what people think, so they don't wear a helmet that can protect their life and save them from serious injury. It's just like, how much normal do you want? Because if
Right,
I
yeah.
only give like, what is that? There's a song lyric. If I always do what I'm told, I'd be bitter by 50 years old. Like,
Yeah,
why don't we just like go? And then that's how you find your people too, because
right, yeah.
people can
Mhm.
sense not being genuine. And the
Right,
weird thing is once you start to like be more of yourself, you actually gain a lot more respect because people
right.
like people that don't just agree to everything. It's
Yeah,
just
totally.
very
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
I mean, also there's like this sort of analogy that I sort of realized. I mean, it's kind of basic and stupid, but I still think it's kind of true. When you think about when you're on an airplane years ago, but
Aw.
maybe we'll now go back to being on airplanes, and people ask you like, do you want the fish or a chicken or something, or the beef or a chicken or something? Well, very likely more people will choose the chicken than the beef, so the beef choice is not normal. So like if it's 51% of the chicken, the other one is not normal. It's because it's just like, well, it's not the majority of people, so it's not normal. So yeah, I guess this could be also interpreted as being weird, like it's not normal, so it's not right. So but nobody thinks about it this way. So and it's also like always comes back to perception. Like for example, like I don't know, like in some other countries it is highly forbidden to eat this animal, and like I mean here in Germany we don't care about this at all. And it's more like it's all about perception. Like what is normal? Like I mean, you think it might be weird to not drink alcohol, but some religions are totally based upon this like fact to not drink alcohol. So what is normal now? Like, are you
Mm,
like this confident in telling them, well, me drinking alcohol, this is very normal, and you're not normal, you're just like
mm.
weirdos. So yeah, I sort of realized this is all stupid, and just be yourself, and it's fine. Nothing
Yeah,
wrong
for
with
sure.
that.
Especially with like, I was literally just interviewing someone. They do a lot of caricatures,
Oh
and
yeah.
they were just drawing people. And I was asking, has anyone like ever gotten offended at like something that you drew? And they were just saying like, I really don't want to offend people, but like when I draw people, I draw them as people, and I don't see them
Okay.
as like ugly or whatever. They just look
Hmm.
like them, which
Yeah.
is just like, yeah, beauty standards are weird
I'm
as
I
heck. Cause,
mean, it's also funny because I'm following an artist. I'm a
uh-huh.
big fan of his work. He's called Mr. Bingo, and his whole personality is based around the fact that he is offending people, because like he's like a famous illustrator. I mean,
That's
let's
interesting.
I will call him famous, but I think he's famous, and
Mm.
he has like this one project he made years ago. It's called Hate Mail, and I think he was kind of drunk, and he said just like on Twitter, like, would anyone buy a postcard if I would make something up and insult them for 50 pounds? And the people were going nuts. Like the people wanted to have like having like being insulted by Mr. Bingo. And he's like, well, I will keep it family clean, but it was like, you are terrible with boats. And it's just like a random postcard, and there's like a drawing of this person like falling off a boat with like with like all the stuff. And then just like, well, people like to get insulted, and they would even pay for it. And now he's like, his whole persona is about like being sort of bad, like not being nice. And it's so funny because people care. People found it so endearing, and he's such a cool person. And he's really nice. Like there's nothing, like he's not like a meanie, but he's like,
Mm.
well, if you pay me to be mean, like I mean I can be it. And it's so like, you see, like there will be a market for you. Like there will be something that you can do. And I think it's interesting to see like the success of a person like him, to see like, well, he's just himself. He likes to draw like weird things, and yes, sometimes insult people on a postcard for 50 pounds, and yeah, the people love it. It's all
Wow.
up to them.
That is so funny. That is so interesting. Wow. Do you have a before recording podcast ritual that you do? Because I have one, and I'm wondering if you also have one.
I mean, it's not a ritual, but I actually forgot to do it
You
today.
summon anything?
Summon like a spirit, or like a
Yeah.
no, no, I don't summon anything. But there's a friend of mine who I met at a Gamescom a couple of years ago, who has his own Twitch stream interview show, and he had two voice actors on them on the show. And I was in the chat and asking the question, because I sometimes tend to get very smacky, like the
Mhm.
smacking sounds. You will likely maybe edit those out for me. I certainly do sometimes. But there's like this like smacky sounds, and I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah.
asking like, well, how do you stop these from happening? And then they told me, well, you need to drink lots of water before, not like immediately before, but I mean just drink some water during the interview or during the podcast thing, but you have to drink lots of water before, and you have to eat a Granny Smith apple.
I was just about to say that because I'm a voice actor, so I learned a bunch of these secrets. Yeah, green apples. Eat green apples before it gets, or like plain unwarmed up toast. That it gets rid of it.
I was like, they were telling me this. I'm just like, this can't be true, right? Then I tested it and it worked. Like, I couldn't believe it. But it was just, something in the Granny Smith apple. Shout out to Granny Smith.
Thank you, Granny Smith. For all
she's not my granny, but I guess she's everybody's granny.
Yeah, it's very interesting about all these secrets that you find out.
Yeah, right.
Do you have like certain thoughts that you run through, or like a beforehand prep that you do? Like literally right before you hit record.
Or
any thoughts you have to run through your mind.
Yeah, double check everything. Like check the Audacity recording, check the Skype recorder, check OBS for recording it, and I guess ask about like the typical 3 questions I always ask: the pronouns, like what pronouns do they want to be used, and the time always important, and is there any topics you don't want to talk about, and can I get a picture of you, which I now started with this season, but those are the like 3 to 4 questions I always have right before I hit record, because those are like key, because sometimes very rarely the people block topics, but I think it's very important to ask about if there's something they don't want to be asked about, just to be...
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why I also say like we can edit stuff out, because I've had people talk about something and they're like, wait a minute, that was a little bit too personal. Can we just get rid of what I said for the past half an hour? And I'm like, that's totally fine. Yeah. Because it's scary to be interviewed. So I don't want people to like feel nervous at all. Because it is like, am I talking too much right now? Am I rambling? Am I revealing too much about like my personal life? It's like all this kind of stuff that they have to balance. So you just got to make it easier.
Sure, yeah.
What is your process for doing these podcasts, like right now? Like, how do you think that it'll change as you make more stuff?
How will it change? I guess it will be more, I will be more used to using editing software, I guess. I'm still fairly new, and one of the things I hate the most is the voice mix, like the audio mixing in the end, because I'm terrible at it. And then I sort of like, because Audacity, like for some reason, is always at max volume, so I have to crank it up. Like I have to, like, I mean, this is so specific, but I just have to get into it for a second. Like the Audacity volume is always at max. So I need to overcrank the volume of like the recordings, because nobody will ever listen to the podcast at full volume. It will always be at 50%. So I'm always overcranking the volume while I'm editing it. I mean, I could just adjust the audio here, but for some reason I don't do it. So I always sort of like destroy my ears by the voices in my head. And then I'm just like, okay, is this now appropriate volume? And I can never be sure. I wish I could just press a button and say like, this is the perfect audio mixing right now, and I hate it. Like this is what something that drives me nuts, because for many episodes, like even I think to some regard the episode I did with you, I think my girlfriend told me like your voice was a little bit too quiet. I'm just like, oh, like I did it already 7 times, and you're just like sort of trying to find the perfect sweet spot, and I'm just like, well, this sounds good. But I'm not an audio engineer, I'm not an audio mixer. So I just hope I get better at this, or I find the tool that, I don't know, lets me be able to adjust it better. I'm not quite sure, but I hope this changes.
Yeah, literally same. Oh my gosh, like I am editing 9 interviews right now, and they're each like about 2.5 hours, 2 hours long. To an hour, and I just have to like hear my own voice over and over again, and it's like, oh, and I have to ask my mom to like help out. Like, Mom, does this sound right? Because it's so hard. I wish I could just hire someone and have them do it for me, but I'm not at that point right now.
Yeah, same. I also like always the intro, because the intro is something I'm still recording after I did the interview. The preview intro, like the intro right before the interview kicks in. And it's I'm always sending it to my girlfriend and it's like, does this sound normal? Because like after I do 20 takes, I like even just like the hi, my name is Dorian, and this is something
Mm.
like that. And just like, this sounds weird. Is it like, hi, my name is Dorian? And it's like, no, this sounds weird. And the moment you sort of realize you repeat it 5 to 7 times, you're already gone. It's more like a hi. And I'm just, oh no, this sounds weird. Like, do I
Yeah.
speak this way? And then you listen to your voice and just like, I do sound like a robot. Like, what happened here? So, yeah, this is something that drives me nuts. But I guess you will just overcome it by time.
Yeah, for sure. I was going through that when I first started like acting and everything, like doing
Right.
every voiceover line, like 15 lines. Sometimes the thing that I found out for voice acting or whatever, you literally just do it one time the whole way through. Do it a maximum of 3 times. 'Cause
Oh,
like when you're
wow.
in the voice recording booth, right? They're not gonna say, okay, do line 1 15 times. We have all the
Right.
budget for that. So yeah, you just gotta get out of your own way. Or like just say it's
Yeah.
good enough. It's easy to say, but I am having a hard time practicing it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's rough, and I guess always like people like us, people like us. I guess like the creators is I mean sometimes like this is something I'm not really looking for, but let's just say I will be like a huge podcaster in like 5 to 10 years. Not likely, but let's say. And then people will likely say like, did you notice that this guy sounds really bored and like it's a lot of smacking and his mouth sounds wet and all the stuff. And I'm just like, dude, I edit the podcast. I know. I
Yeah,
hate it
yeah,
even more than you. Like, don't tell me. I know it.
yeah.
Like,
I
like
know, right? It's so
yeah.
annoying. Like especially like the
Yeah,
voice
yeah.
cracks and you're like, oh, I was trying to
Totally.
make a
Yeah,
good
yeah, yeah.
point.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And then like the stuttering and sometimes repeat like this was something I actually told Dave about. Like
mm.
sometimes I see the question, then I say it horribly, but the answer is still good. And I'm just like, wow, the question was so good, but I was terrible, like like rumbling around and like fear and creating stuff. And are you afraid of fear in your work? And I'm just like, and he was like, oh yeah, like fear in art is always helpful. And he gives me like this long, beautiful answer, and I'm just like, wow. Like he speaks for like 10 minutes and it's so good, and I'm just I can't even put like this one sentence without like making a total buffoon out of myself.
See, that is the thing that I find so fascinating because when I listen to your interviews, you sound like a professional. Like you don't sound like you're like, oh yeah. Like when you were interviewing me, I was like, this guy's really good. I gotta say something really smart right now. Like, how is it worth their time? But yeah,
Yeah,
it's so interesting because like after you hear your own voice like a bunch of
yeah,
times, it's like gets so numbing, dude. Like it's
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
like I have like so many interviews to edit and it's like it's so fun, but but
yeah.
it's only us that
Right,
notices our own problems. Like my
right, yeah.
perception of like how you are is totally different from like how you just said. I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about, and then instantly in your mind it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like don't like just like yes, right.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that's I don't think that I was doing a series on like fear in art and I was asking all these like showrunners and like different kinds of directors and people like
Right,
if that ever goes away. It doesn't. You just
right,
get
yeah,
used to this is the part where I'm gonna ignore how stupid I sound or if my voice
yeah.
cracks or
I,
whatever
I
because it's fine.
I also think like this like, sounds like maybe very nice. It's just it shows that you care. It's more like if I don't care, I just like sometimes I see like I mean I don't wanna trash talk some other podcast host or something, but I sometimes come across like when I do research that they went on like a guest of mine went to a different show years back, and then they just dump the audio file. They just like press record, and then it's like, okay, thanks for being on the show. So we can do this now, right? And like everything is on there, like nothing edited, like no like thinking pauses, like no like lip smacking, nothing is edited. And I'm just like, wow, this like it would be so easy for people like us just to release it. And I mean, you're even crazier than I am because you do all the great art stuff. You do like all the like tiny videos. Sometimes you edit these videos. You have like clips of it, like even like I mean I don't want to sound too horrible, but I mean like just the way you did like just the way you promoted my episode of our interview was just like wow, she's so much better than I am. Like I write this horrible text and I'm just like, well,
What?
how can I phrase the text? And you did like, well, just like some clips, like some here. You did like a tiny drawing and stuff. I'm just like, wow, like she has it all figured out, and I'm just like sitting here and just like, I hate social media. Please get me out.
This is so weird because I was thinking like, whoa, it was really the thing that you wrote, like for each guest you write a little blurb, and
Right.
I cheat on mine. I ask the guests to write their blurb, and I have something that I copy and paste every time
Oh,
because
really?
I don't have the brain space. Like you wrote something really nice for mine, and I was like, wow, I can't even talk about myself like this. This is so strange because like
Yeah, you see, it's all perception, you know, like
yeah.
everybody feels like they're just I think this is all about imposter syndrome.
Oh
You know?
yeah,
Because
for sure.
I think everybody's just like, well, you know, looking up to like all these great podcasters or all this stuff. And, you know, like I said, it's just showing that we care. And then we just like don't want to embarrass the guests. I mean, I can embarrass myself all the time.
Oh yeah.
And I likely do, but it's more like I don't want to embarrass the guest and write like, thanks, Dave, for coming onto the show for talking about vegan little nightmares. Thanks and goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. You know, like
Yeah,
I want to make it sound enticing so that the guests say like, well, you know, like this sounds like a great episode. I want.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Yeah, that's one of the things that actually motivates me is fear. Like I interview
Right.
some like really like I interview pretty much like all of my role models so far, which is insane.
Right, yeah.
But like I don't want them to think like I don't want them to hear the same stupid questions over and over. So I'm like,
Right,
how can
yeah.
I be inventive? And then that fear like just pushes something to start. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, right.
But then it's like the standards, I don't know. I guess my expectations are like so much higher for these interviews than like
Right.
maybe what they're expecting. So I come across as like extra cool when in reality I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing this right. But it's all fine.
Yeah, you know.
It's all fine.
Yeah. I guess you know, like I said before, it's fine to be you, and it's enough, you know. There's nothing, nobody needs to push themselves over the edge and
Mhm.
crush themselves over their own ambition. It's just, you know, it's fine. And as you can see, even though I think I'm a writing baboon and a talking baboon, seems like I'm doing just fine when I get interviewed by you or you interview me. You know, everybody comes across just as normal or just as deranged. You know, maybe this
Oh,
is
yeah.
this is the lesson.
All the same kind of weird.
all weird and crazy. So yeah, you know.
What is the hardest part about interviewing people for you? And what's the most fun part? Follow-up question.
The hardest part. I mean, I guess it is. I guess it is doing the research to some extent. So it's more like the coming up with a question that they haven't been asked before, or like what makes them go, oh, that's a good question. Like this is the indicator for me. Like, I mean,
It feels so good, doesn't it?
yeah,
It's like, oh,
it feels really good
yes.
because you're like I put like I had to have like this 5 to 10 questions who are just like trying to be really, really good. And if only one gets like this, like, oh, right, I haven't been asked this before, or like, oh, how do you know this? It's like more like a yes, come on, let's go, another round. So I'm the king. And I guess, you know, this is also the most fun about, but it makes it difficult, you know, like going through all these interviews. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm not really complaining, but sometimes I'm trying to get like interviews who aren't anymore like online through like Spotify or something, or like sometimes they have like old hosting sites. I'm just like, okay, are they still on Spotify? Are they still here? So I'm trying to get like as much information as possible. And you will never get all the interviews done. Like, you know, like the bigger the guest, the more they have talked about. I mean, there are also more chance that you find some random tidbits and you can surprise them. But yeah, you know, and also sometimes the question you think is very smart is just like sometimes a question about like, what? Why do you ask this? Like, it's so weird. And like, you know, in the end, I don't know how they felt. I mean, they say it was a nice time, but I mean, who knows, you know? Like, I mean, they could just say like, well, that was just a garbage round. I mean, you know, hopefully Vanity Fair comes back next or something. And but you know, this is all fun. I guess, you know, seeing that the people have fun on the show, like just enjoying themselves, like laughing or, you know, talking about the stuff they care about. I guess this is all what makes it worth in the end. And yeah, I mean, you can only get these if you do the hard work by putting in the time and doing research, checking out YouTube, maybe Reddit, stalking the Twitter and
Oh
Instagram
yeah.
for
It's
like
a
a
skill. It is a
it's
skill.
yeah, but it's also a little bit like I sometimes feel like it's like one of the things I'm very afraid of is just like liking something from like 10 years ago. And it's just like, this is just a little bit too weird, you know? It's just like, you shouldn't like this stuff. And it's sometimes funny to like, once the episode is released and you ask a specific question, and then they feel like, oh, wow, you dug this up. And then you can like on Twitter, for example, retweet it. And then it's like, well, if you wanted to have the answer to this question, it's now here on the podcast. And it feels great here. But it's sometimes a bit, I'm just like, like, am I going too far? Like for I don't know. Let's just make something up. Like, let's say somebody lost a turtle 10 years ago, and then I was like asking, like, did you think like the death of the turtle inspired you to create Avatar and the Lion Turtles? And they were like, wait, what? Why do you know about my turtle? Like, what are you crazy? And I was like, oh, okay. So it never happened so far, but a little bit too much. I have a feeling.
It's definitely like an interesting line. I try like, especially because I definitely had some trouble like interviewing, not trouble, but it was very interesting to interview like people that I've look up to since I was literally like 12 years old, that I literally know everything about because I was 12 and I was just stalking their Tumblr all the time. But and then how do I like bring that up? But it's different, or my perspective is that if you're excited about something, like in the interviews that you're saying, I never once got the vibe that like the interviewee like hated doing the interview with you or whatever, because it's always like the passion or whatever you have. Obviously you're very passionate about this, so that definitely just shines through, and nobody's thinking about, oh yeah, my turtle. Right, Shelley.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is the most fun part about interviewing people?
The most fun part. Well, you know, I guess it's just, you know, overall, it's just like having something out there that people can experience. It's just like something of sort of like, it's free entertainment. There's no charge. It's like, you know, like it's not about the money for me, you know, like I don't earn a cent so far. It's more like
same.
You know, it's just like people can find this stuff and be inspired and say like, wow, like somebody asked this question, I wanted to ask them. Or it's like, wow, I never thought about veganism or something like this. You know, some of these things are just like, I think is the most gratifying stuff. And also sometimes also like some of the stuff I learned, for example, like I had a special episode about how Arabs and Muslims are portrayed in the video games industry. It's a very it's like one of my favorite episodes so far, and it's something that I'm like, wow, I didn't think about it this way, but it's so true. Like everything he says in the interview is so true, and I guess like having something like this makes me sort of proud, and it's also very fun to do. So just like having like something that is free of value, and I mean, no, that is free and it's full of value, and you know, it's just something like, I learned something, like, you know, even like something about myself or something about the world and how they perceive things, and I guess this is the most fun. And then especially if somebody talks to me, like one of my friends said to me, like, wow, I just listened to this episode, I was like, wow, blown away, because it was just, I never thought about it this way. And you know, just like sharing like these important messages, getting them across, even it's just like, I mean, in the vast ocean of the internet, where everything gets swept away in social media by the constant stream of content, you know, even if it's just for a brief second to have like the sort of attention from a couple of people and listening by like, I don't know, a couple of hundred people listening to the show or something, you know, it's enough sometimes, you know. It's just like having to know this is the fun part, seeing people enjoy the show, and maybe not needing to think about other stuff, or sometimes thinking about the stuff. They were like, oh wow, I never thought about how Arabs are portrayed. Yeah, we kill them a lot in video games. That's quite true. So I guess this is the most fun part.
Yeah, that is so cool. That reminds me of like one of my favorite experiences, I guess I could say, was somebody contacted me after I asked them the questions, saying that they thought about like one particular question that I asked, and that helped them like start their project, which like made me so happy. I was like, wow, Because
That's so awesome. Yeah.
it's also, I was talking about this with the first person I did this podcast with, interview with, but just realizing that you're not alone, or like
Right.
just
Yeah.
going through this, like, I made a speech for graduating high school, which was entirely based off one of these interviews that I
Hmm.
did with somebody because I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was just,
Hmm.
it's just so fantastic to be able to, I guess you can get that in real life, or it's different to have like small talk with people, I guess, but this is like you're finding out why they do stuff or the kinds of people that they are. And
Yeah.
it just expands your worldview. It's fantastic. I
Yeah.
recommend it to
Totally.
everyone.
Hmm.
What is the one project or dream job that you feel, or story that you feel like you're meant to tell or you'll regret not doing?
Mm, I mean, there are a couple of things, I guess. And funny enough, yeah, well, funny enough, there was always this concept I had in my head about like, I think there was an idea I had years ago. I'm not like really like obsessed with it, but I think it's such an interesting concept, and it's part of like the thing about what I like about video games. It's more like the creating a sort of situation where you don't want to fight or kill the other person in like a sort of like maybe story sense or something. And I'm not quite sure if you have watched it or played it, The Last of Us Part Two.
I've heard
There's
of it.
like,
I haven't played it yet.
oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic video game. And there are certain elements of it where I was just like, well, I don't want to fight this person. And I'd rather, let's say, die. And I would rather that my character that I'm currently playing dies than killing the other character I'm currently fighting. And I think this is like something, a very interesting concept of like, can you really achieve something like this? Because in video games, it's all about winning. It's like killing more people than the other person, beating them in Tetris or some other stuff. It's more always about like sometimes like very often about crushing the other person. It's sometimes also about like cooperation, but also it's about like winning against the enemy, like outsmarting the game. But it's very, very rare. I think it only happened to me with this one game where I thought, I don't want to continue this sort of thing. Like, I know I have to because this isn't my story. I'm not making decisions. These are the characters and they are their decisions. But I always thought like I wish I could do something like this where I create something that people would say, I don't want to do this, but I have to. And I guess this is one of the things. And I guess it's just something I think it's so interesting to see like, could you really do it? And I guess they did. So I guess they sure showed me. And there are a couple of other projects that I think, well, are worth going for. Not going too much into detail, but some are art related. Currently, I'm currently thinking about doing some other stuff related to art. Don't worry, it's not selling my art. It's more like, trying to sort of spread art across the world and making them more affordable, or like making them affordable in some sort of way.
That's really, really interesting. That kind of reminds me of like how the game Subnautica started, if
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar with it, but like how
Yeah,
they just didn't include guns or whatever because
yeah, yeah, right,
just why? Yeah. It's
right.
very interesting.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's also another game called Journey. It's one of my favorite games. It's such a beautiful game, and
Ooh.
it's a very special game in my heart because it's like it has like this strange multiplayer component where you sometimes meet other fellow travelers, and you don't know in the beginning if those are real people or bots or something. And then you realize, well, these are real people, but you don't know who it is. There's no name shown or anything, and you only have like this like small interactive button you can only press like to make a tiny sound, like a beep sound, and then you can press it more rapidly or you can press it louder or more quietly. But then you feel sort of like you create this bond with this like nameless stranger, and then the goal is to climb the mountain. And it's sort of like a very intimate relationship, I guess you can put it, or like this like weird experience of like, well, I still think about this, and I still think about the travelers I have, and the journeys I made. And it's so interesting to see like a game like this being able to bond with like this like faceless figure to sort of like, yeah, bond together over a video game. And I guess this is what I said before, from like the beauty of like having it interactive and all.
That is so interesting. I'm definitely gonna check that out. It's very cool. what is something that you failed at, and what happened afterwards? Was it as bad as you thought it was gonna be? Did you live?
Well, yeah, but I think the funny part is the funny part is that I wouldn't be here without me screwing it up horribly. So when it's quite interesting because well, back in the day at university, I guess it's not too revealing, but I was before I started university, I was a year in China studying Chinese. So I came back and I was like, well, I'm quite confident in my Chinese skills, in my orally speaking skills. I'm still quite solid. Not good back in the day, but I'm still fine. And but my written stuff was all horrible because I hate writing. I'm so bad at it. But when I went to university studying Chinese and economics, I was like, well, like I don't know, like I had lots of friends who were just like, well, you just need to study 3 weeks in advance and then it's fine. Well, none of them studied Chinese, and it's not working like that, especially not for me because I learn incredibly slow. And so all like for let's say like we have like 6 months of periods. Like if I start day one, I will be ready like 2 to 3 days before the exam. But then like my characters, like all the Chinese symbols, will all be wrong right up until the end because I sort of fix them like incrementally because like well I can sort of remember this now and this now, so they will always be wrong like right up until the end. So I could never finish, like no way I could do it in 3 weeks, impossible, especially me. And then I was like, well, I totally screwed it up, so I need to now focus. And then I was like, okay, now I guess six weeks will be just fine, just relax, and 6 weeks will be fine. And then I screwed up again. And in university, you have this rule: if you screw twice, you're out. Like it's over. And you have like this sort of like special agreement. Let's put it this way: that you can apply for like a special third attempt. And I was really afraid, and really afraid, because like if you screw up this time again, then you're blocked from all universities that are related to this topic. So no Chinese and no economics for me anymore. And people were like asking me like, are you really confident in yourself? And I'm just like, I don't really think about it this way. I will just do it, and then I will focus on nothing but study. So I finished like the 6 month period. I now started, I think, 2 months early because we had vacations, like holidays. So I spent like 8 months preparing for it, and then I crushed the exam. It was really well. But then right afterwards, I did like I only studied, not like only, but I really like I think I don't know, like I was really diligent. I was like studying all the time. And I guess this put all into perspective in guess, like all the grades did like none of the grades counted where I failed and everything. So it only counted from this moment. And then I sort of like did like all the exams really well. Because I was always like a C student, like nothing really too bad, nothing too good. But then like now after I put in all the time in the work, I was like suddenly becoming like a B+, A- student. I'm just like, wow, like I could have never imagined being this good or something. But I would have never done it if I hadn't screwed up, because I really needed this, like, because I was always very lazy. I didn't care. Like I was a lazy kid. I never cared before. But like the moment of me like having like this, like standing on the edge, like seeing the abyss, like go like right in front, like you were like expelled from the university, like like this moment was just like for me like the motivator and like changing everything I do now. So like now putting in the hours, like putting in the research, like everything is now changed because of that. So this was like definitely the moment where I was like, no, this is like horrible. Like I was really afraid, really afraid of screwing it up. But like it was so important. So I think failure is so important in this regard, like especially from like, I mean, at least for me, like I really had to have this like really crushing moment where I was just like, dude, you're horrible. Like you screwed it up. You can't do it like this anymore. It's not working. So I really had to reevaluate everything I do, like every study stuff I do. So yeah, and this was just brilliant. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but
Yeah.
if I see somebody like really failing a couple of times, I'm just like, it might just be the things that they need. And I always think it's better to get crushed and then change it and decide, well, this isn't for me, to then just like say, well, don't learn anything from it. I will just continue doing it and not change anything. So, sometimes people think like, well, but you wasted an entire year of studying. I'm just like, I don't care. It changed everything. Like, it made my life so much better. Like, everything was so much better afterwards. I put in all the hours, and I think, like, I don't know, people wouldn't really like the person I was before, like just lazy and not doing it. And now I was studying more and participating more in class and all this stuff. So it was more like I guess it changed my life. Sounds so cheesy, but it was just a life-changing event, and it was screwing up. So come on, like what's a year compared to something like this? Like, like, also, what's normal? Like, why would it be unnormal? Like we're so afraid of failure and like seeing like, oh yeah, like you're already old and you're not having a job yet and you don't have your bachelor's or your master's degree. I'm just like, come on, like I don't care. Like just let me figure it out by myself. And if I screw 3 times, then then I might be a chef or might be something else. It will be fine. It's fine. Learn from it, and it doesn't help if you just ignore it. Learn from it, from your mistakes. And then if you want to change something, and if you're not, then I guess it's not for you.
Yeah, wow, what a fantastic story. It's like, that's so cool. Like, no matter how many times that you think that the world ends, it somehow
Right.
doesn't. And it
Yeah,
turns
right.
out fine. As long
Right,
as you're
yeah.
here, it's like, all right.
It's fine, yeah.
What is the most fearless thing that you've ever done?
The most fearless thing. I mean, it's funny because sort of I would sort of say the most fearless I am is when the interview is starting, or when I'm approaching people, or when I'm giving a presentation, maybe at work or maybe for like, I don't know, family or something, just doing something, just giving a presentation or something. The moment before, I'm the most frightened and the most fearful. But the moment I start, I sort of get into like this sort of calming sense. It's not like black and white. There will be like a sort of transition period, but I will sort of realize that I'm slowly getting more adjusted and more calm. So I guess I will become more fearless during the presentation or during the podcast, even though I'm quite frightened in the beginning. But I guess those moments, or like approaching people for my thesis or for the interview on a convention center, I might be like, oh my God, it's this person. I'm just like, okay, not screwed up. And then the moment I talk, it's more like oh yes, this is now like all the gears are clicking in and everything is connected. I'm just like, okay, now just bring it. Like now just push it out, push your information out. And most of the time I don't make it sound too stupid, I guess. And it's worked out fine. So in the end, it all turns out well. But I guess I sort of need this like sort of being afraid and being frightened right up until you have to sort of deliver it. Just bring it or get crushed.
Yeah, for sure. I do that with public speaking, especially like speeches and
Right,
stuff
yeah.
all the time. It's like I was just doing like an improv class yesterday, and he
Mm-hmm.
was just saying how the excitement and the nervousness, they're both like in the same like kind of
Oh, yeah,
areas in
right.
your brain. So you could
Makes
just like
sense.
switch it from like I feel terrified, I'm literally going to die, to
Right.
I feel just really excited about what's going on. It's really
Yeah,
strange, like that kind of flow
it's
state that you get. I don't know
it's
if
weird.
that's
Yeah,
comparing
it's
to.
also, yeah. I guess it's some. I mean, it might be a strange comparison, but I think it's related to like eating spicy food, because it's more like on paper it makes no sense. Hurting yourself while eating something delicious makes no sense. But I guess you sort of get addicted to this like sort of feeling of like being afraid and overcoming it, and it's sort of related. I guess I mean, I guess it's why it's called hot ones with the
Yeah.
spicy chicken wings,
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I guess there's something to it that they sort of get addicted to, like overcoming their own fears. And I guess I can't imagine any stand-up comedian or any host or anything being like, yeah, just just very calmly doing everything. They
Mhm.
were afraid at one point, and I think they just loved it so much. The feeling of like being like, oh, okay, finally it's done, finally it's over, getting a couple of laughs out of the people, and just taking it and be like, well, I think this feels really great. Like, yeah, I hated it the moment. Like, I hated the way it felt before, but it was worth it during the time I was on stage or the feeling you get afterwards. Sometimes, I mean, very likely they also got crushed on stage and then they also felt terrible afterwards. But I think the positive feelings always will outweigh the negative ones. Not for everybody, of course, I don't want to generalize, but for some of the people who were always afraid. And I guess I think I read somebody said like, yeah, if you want to be a stand-up comedian, yeah, be prepared to be horrible for 2 years or something. You're just lame. Like nobody will laugh at your jokes in the beginning. I mean, I'm sort of like, saying it just to get a point across. But I think there's some truth to it. Like I said before with Maximilian Dude, who said that, well, you will be terrible in the beginning. So I guess this is all related to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I did stand-up comedy for the first time, and it was like, there's something like very addicting about even failing on stage.
Yeah, right.
It's
Right, yeah.
so fun. Like
Yeah.
once you switch your mindset to that, because for me, I'm not really. I thought I was like addicted to like getting like the perfect like applause or whatever.
Oh,
It's
right, yeah.
not. I just really you get this adrenaline rush.
Yeah, right. I
And
guess.
it's like
Yeah.
I'm terrified right now, but it's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
What would you say to someone who wants to start doing these interviews or podcasts, but they're too afraid that they're like they'll not be good enough or whatever? What's been the most helpful thing that you've learned so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple, but it's something that stopped me from doing it previously, some other stuff. Just do it. Like, I mean, you are bad. You are really terrible right now. And I was terrible. And, Joe Rogan was terrible. Like, everybody who is now big was terrible. Like, nobody was like, I mean, some people for sure. But I mean, the vast majority, the 99.9%, they were all terrible. They woke up, they said like some bad jokes into the mirror. They were horrible. And then they became great stand-up comedians or actors or something. Like can you really imagine? I don't know, like Christian Bale waking up and be like, well, I'm just going to win the Oscar tomorrow. Just, I'm just going to do it. No, they were all horrible. Like if you see it, some of the directors like work, like some did like really terrible stuff. I mean, of course, there are some people who did like, I don't know, they did Hereditary, the first movie. And I'm just like, wow, okay, maybe not everybody, but who knows what Ari Aster did before? Like he could have made 10 movies about a cat going through a garbage can. And nobody knows it. And he would be like, oh, it's such a great cat movie. Can I get $1 million? And they were like, are you insane? You're horrible. So, like just do it, do it and know that you're bad. And it doesn't matter how much time you will put in. Don't try to be too perfect, because a year later you will come back and say, Jesus, you're horrible. Like, and then you will say, well, I guess I really did improve. So that's something. And don't be afraid of being bad. And people are fine with being, people are fine with having like suboptimal interviews, and people will still have a nice time. So like sometimes I reach out to older guests and say like, oh, how are you doing? Is everything fine? Do you want to come on to the show in the future? Like, yeah, would love to. Like, I had such a wonderful time. And this was the guest I had my first interview with, El Huervo, and I was like, wow, this is like even him, like the worst guest. Like not him, but I mean the worst episode I did. Worst. Like I did so horrible, like interrupting the people, stuttering, sounding like very robotic. Can you tell me what inspired your art? Like very, very bland and terrible stuff. Like even him, he said like, yeah, what a wonderful time. It was so cool to being asked all these stupid questions. And like you will find your audience in some way. Like even if it's just yourself or it's your friends, there will be an audience and people will, to some regard, like it. I mean, some of my my uploads on YouTube have like 5 views or something, and it's doesn't feel nice, but who cares in the end? I mean, you did something great, people enjoyed the content, and just do it, and nobody is stopping you. You don't need the fanciest equipment, don't need the like space mic with the recording arm, or what's it called, like adjustable arm and stuff, and have like reach out all the guests, and some people will like, I mean, if you knew how many interviews I request compared to how many I get, don't be discouraged by not getting replies or getting a negative reply. Don't be discouraged. Like there will be other guests, there will be cooler guests, there will be worse guests. I mean, there's no like real reason. Like, I mean, I would rather have a guest that would like to be on the show than a forced guest that is coming onto the show just because he thinks like, well, you know, I sort of feel the obligation. So I'm never angry at anybody who says like, this sounds bad. Like, no thanks. This does, like, I have to decline, you know? It's all good, you know, it's all fine with me in the end. I can reach out to them 2 years later, or, you know, I mean, you never know what happened to them. Maybe they had a bad day at the office. Maybe they had something else, you know? Don't make excuses. Don't feel discouraged by getting negative replies, you know? Just be yourself and, you know, just do it. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you don't like it, it's also okay to stop. Like, it's okay to not be a great painter. It's not okay. And there's no shame in trying 30, 40 things out and not finding the one thing. If it's in the end you playing the flute, hey, it took 40 tries, but you know, now you're at the flute. Who knows what you're going to achieve with the flute, you know?
Uh-huh. That is a wonderful analogy. Yeah, I'm really curious. I asked you a bunch of questions about like how stuff has changed for you, but I
Sure.
want to know from that first interview, the first one that you've ever done, what has stayed the same to now?
I guess it's always caring more about the guest than about myself. It's always more like the being driven by the guest. It's more like it's all for them, not for me. It's never about me. Like, how do I come across? Does it look me? Does it make me look stupid? Is it something? Is it more like it's always like was this worth the time of the guest? This is like, I guess, what it boils down in the end to me. Like, did they have a good time? Was it worth wasting an hour of their precious time? And I guess this is something I always sort of try to put into my work. Also, some other stuff like try to be as diverse as possible, or try to get guests from different backgrounds, and maybe like, you know, just like their work experience, their life experience, anything. Just like trying to get more people on there, and also trying to be like, I mean, it's not a rule, but I would much rather to surprise the guests to be like, wow, you got like the GM of this company, and now you're interviewing this like intern at this company. Like, there's no rules for me. Like, I mean, I think it's always nice to be unpredictable. I mean, there's still no audience that cares right now, you know, there's like no one expecting anything right now. But I think this is something I would like to maintain if I ever blew up, you know, sometimes in, I don't know, 5 years. If there's something like, well, wow, you know, you got like Neil Druckmann, the creative director of this, and the next episode is, wait, like an intern who edits videos for a Let's Player? Why? Like, why this person? And I'm just like, this is the reason why. Because nobody expected, like nobody gives this person a chance, and they would very like like, can you imagine like getting like the editor or somebody who just started out like you know, like, I don't know, some people, some person who just got viral on YouTube, and they now have a big audience. Let's say, what's his name, Uncle Roger, for example, and then now, you know, get like his editor, and he's like a young person, for example, and he now starts out. He was looking up to this comedian Uncle Roger for a long time, and he's now finally like becoming the editor of him. Like, can you imagine like getting like his passion into the show? Like, man, it would be nuts. Like, I mean, how many interviews did like, I don't know, like Neil Druckmann get so far, or like Elizabeth Olsen, like I don't know, 2000, like, I don't know, could be 2000, I guess. And like how many interviews did he get? But I think those interviews are even more worth sometimes. Like, those are the people who have like the passion, the voices in their mouth to want to get out like all the ideas and the brains and stuff. So they want to get the point across, and they want to tell their story. And something like being unpredictable and not caring always about like, well, you know, I could fill this slot. I mean, maybe it will change. You know, I'm not claiming that I will be irresistible to the temptation of money and success. You know, I mean, you can only say that if you ever got the chance. It's always easy to say that, you know, it will always be my passion. I will never be driven by money. But you know, it could be. You never know. And so far, there's no money involved, so I can do whatever I want. And I like that I'm able to do this. If I end up one day just like Ted Price as a CEO of a company and trying to make my own podcast and sort of have to be more careful what I ask, well, then it's just like that. But as long as it goes, I will try to maintain, having a diverse cast and also caring more about the guest than about myself.
Yeah, for sure. That is wonderful. That's one of the reasons why I started doing this particular series, because I want people to maybe in the future, this is like a moment in time. Right now
Right.
it's like 2021. Maybe in the future you'll look back at this and then be like, "Oh, wow. A lot of stuff has changed. A lot of stuff has
Yeah,
stayed
right.
the same." That sort of stuff. It's very, very interesting.
Right. Yeah, totally.
What's something that actually, I'll ask my previous question. What do you not get, or what are you trying to understand about the gaming industry?
Hmm. I mean, it's always like, how can an industry this successful have also this much of a fluctuation of people? Like, how is it possible that we sometimes lose a lot of the people that work in this industry, even though it's like one of the most successful industries in the world right now? And why are people getting burned out? I mean, I've previously in the podcast we did talked about sort of books and stuff, and I have it actually right here with me. That's the one book I told you about. It's called Press Reset,
Yeah.
and it's about exactly this topic of people getting burned out in the games industry. And I guess this is something I really care about, but it's also more like a bigger question of like, well, I mean, I guess why people get burned out because people are greedy for money, but I think it's like more like, how can we change this? Like, how can we sort of create a more healthy environment? And also, why is the gaming industry, like, I mean, some aspects of it so hostile towards the game developers? So this is something I truly want to figure out and like try to understand and also try to counteract with my podcasts. And this is the reason I talk about crunch on the show very often. And I mean, talk to people who are familiar with the topic, and also, try to do a special about this book in some regards. Like I always want to sort of do better for the industry and not like make it like it's just like all nice and all dandy here. Just like, they make the money and it's all great. They play games all the typical misconception of like, oh,
Yeah.
so you work in the games industry, so you just play all the games and you review
Mhm.
them, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, it sounds nice on paper. So, but I had like a person reviewing games, and they were like, well, I don't know, can you imagine like on the weekend, like the game comes in at like 3 o'clock on Friday, and then the review has to be done on Monday, and it's like a 80-hour game. It's like, how do you think this will work?
Mm.
And I'm just like, wow, this sounds terrible. And I mean, it could be, if they're lucky, I guess, a game they look forward to, but it could just be, I don't know, the new like I don't want to name any bad game, but let's just say any random good game, like the new Half-Life, and it would be terrible, like the new Half-Life in the series, and the person was just like, I don't really care about Half-Life. Like, I mean, it's such a fine game, but I don't care, and I don't care about it. Like, I had plans for the weekend, like I wanted to see my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my mom, like anything. So it's not more like everything is so great. I try to highlight the negative stuff about the games industry, as not as much as possible, but I try to include it in my questions.
Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that. She says everything you do, even if it's like your dream job or whatever, everything has that um you're gonna have to like close your eyes and like swallow it because it's like
Right, yeah.
you just gotta get it over with. Like that sort
Yeah,
of
right.
thing. Every single thing. Even like if you wanted to be like a super famous actor, you're gonna have to deal with separating your personal life and like having people
Yeah,
wonder every single detail about you. It's like
right,
it's
yeah.
it's just insane. That
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
I guess it's more about the like, if you continue what you do despite those moments, then it's something for you.
Yeah, because for example, if you're super famous like that too, you can help so many people. You can bring
Right,
light to attentions that like you have so much like power. I don't know,
right. Yeah, right.
influence. I think
Yeah,
is the
right.
right word.
Hmm.
Yeah, what's something that you really want to try in the future, like directing a movie or making a game, etc.
I mean, yeah, I would for sure like to do work on a game, and maybe this will, I don't know, maybe it will happen sooner or later, but I will at one point. there's a sort of goal of mine where I want to just like, so it sounds so old. Like it feels like such an old answer, like one day I would like to go back and go to the cinemas, and then I would like to watch one of my movies with the audience on the big screen. So it's something along those lines. I would really like to sometimes go into a random like a electronic. That sounds so old, like an electronic store, like a store where they sell like games and stuff, and just say like a product I work on there at the top sellers or something, or just like or like a if I would ever write a book, just go into the train station and see like they have like this like tiny stores of like books they can pick up and purchase during their transition. Just looking at it and just like, wow, this is something we did. Like not me. Like I don't want to sound like, oh, it's all me, but I feel like, yeah, we did this. Like me and the fellow people at this and this and this and this. We all created this. Like this was a combined effort, and yeah, we made a book, we made a game, we made a movie. I guess this is one of the things I wanted to do. And it's not, I mean, it will be most likely a game, since this is all I talk about and I constantly try to immerse myself with. But hey, who knows? Could be a comic, could be a movie, could be something else, could be cookbook. Who knows?
Ooh, a cookbook, a game cookbook. That would be interesting.
There are some,
you got to make sure you have a vegan section for Dave, though.
For sure, yeah. The Little Nightmares vegan sausage will be.
That's lovely. What is this might be a question that I can cut out if you want. What is your favorite or the best interview that you feel you've done so far?
I mean, that's quite easy. I think that's easy, and I think it's not. I think it's a little bit of a not cheap answer. Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, of course, I could now say the interview we did, but I'm a little bit more cheeky because, like I said before, it's the interview with Rami Ismail, talking about this like very serious issue, and I also have an interview which unfortunately sort of suffers from like the sound quality, but I'm still very proud I did it. It's one related to the Black Lives Matter movement and like the killing of George Floyd, and the other one is, like I said, related to the portrayal of Arabs in video games and in media. So like, how are Arabs portrayed in Marvel movies, the biggest movies there are currently? And like I recently rewatched the movies with my girlfriend, like Iron Man, for example, and yeah, they are just angry brown people yelling something, and there's one nice person, but the rest are just like, well, they're brown and bad, just shoot them, like torch them, like in the Iron Man suit, they're all evil guys, and they're all like, oh, they just happen to be brown, and I don't know where it was, Afghanistan or something, and I really, really enjoyed this episode because I think it's a very, very important topic, and he's one of the more prolific people in the industry. He's like a very famous game developer, so he was coming onto the show and speaking about this, and it changed the way I look at these movies and the way I look at media. And this is something I'm very, very happy that I could have done. And like I said, the friend of mine talked about me. He's like, whoa, I never noticed it. And it's so true, because like, we live here in Germany, we're very rarely exposed to like what Arab people think. I mean, at least for my friend circle, it's not like, I'm just honest here. I'm just like, I don't have a lot of exposure to like these issues, and I wish I had these issues more forefront here. I mean, I might be a little bit ignorant, of course, blessed and growing up as like a sort of white person, so I'm not that much exposed to like the racism and stuff. And I'm very sure it's happening here. I'm not trying to diminish anything like that, but it's. I think this is like something I was really passionate about. That I feel like, well, I could have. I had the chance to ask this question and also, talk about these issues, even though I couldn't have any like snarky, like really clever question here. It was more like a real personal story about like how he grew up with like learning about all these racist things that happening in the games industry that we're so used to by now. So easy answer, Rami Ismail episode.
That is lovely. Yeah, definitely. And it's so crazy like how it affects like real life too.
Right,
like I never thought like I could be like a main character until I saw Connie from Steven Universe, and she's like a sword, and I'm like, I can have a sword. It's just a little bit insane how that affects. Yeah, I could talk about that for a while.
I mean, it makes it also so much interesting. I think it's so boring. I think the people always say like, well, it's forced diversity. I mean,
But I'm not
sure,
forced. Like I am here. I didn't choose.
right.
Yeah,
But I
yeah, for
thought,
sure.
like, yeah, but I mean, sometimes I'm just like, well, those movies are so interesting, especially when they are rooted in culture. So, for example, one of my
Yeah, for
favorite
sure.
movies of recent times was The Farewell, which was a Chinese movie, like made by a American-born Chinese,
Mm.
about like saying goodbye to your dying grandmother. And it's so interesting that it's so deeply rooted in culture, and it's just like it's only made with like an Asian cast. And I thought it was so cool. I am part Asian myself, and I'm not like always of like, wow, it's so cool to feel represented, but it's more like, yes, I would like to see more of these stories. Like, and even though I didn't like Black Panther because I don't think it's a good movie, like people are allowed, like, yeah, the black community is allowed to have a bad movie with them in them. Like the white
Yeah.
people are having lots of bad movies every day. Like there are lots of I don't know, lots of bad Hollywood actors, and they're just in
Mhm.
for money, and they get like shoehorned in there, and they get like tons of millions of dollars, and they are released every day. But then they're like, Black Panther comes out, and they're like, well, this one was bad, so let's not do this anymore. No, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
there are
know.
also good movies with only black actors. Like, have you seen Moonlight, for example? It's a terrific movie. Or If Beale Street Could Talk. Like, those are really wonderful movies with a majority of black actors in it. No, it's not just like, oh, Black Panther was bad. Now we don't need the black diversity cast anymore. And like this is so good. Like I think it needs to be like, even though myself included don't feel encouraged or inspired when I see a part Asian German looking person on the screen. Like, for example, you just said it. You feel very inspired by Connie. And I think lots of people feel inspired when they look at the cast of Legend of Korra or Avatar.
Mhm.
Like having a openly gay couple in like a quote unquote kids or teenage young adult show, like it's a big deal. Like, and you can always say that, well, these are forced stereotypes, and well, it's only forced because we think about it this way.
Mhm.
Like if everything is mixed up, and if we have like a million of Moonlights out there, like the movie Moonlight, nobody will think about it as like a forced, like, look at all the black people in the movie. It was just a
Yeah.
movie. Like it's
Mhm.
just a movie and nothing else. And it's only our perception that will change. And I can't wait for people to just shut up about this. Like, can we not shove in any more diversity actors into
Yeah.
the show? I feel like, what I really, really dislike is when they say like, you see, like for example, the Ghostbusters movie, like with the female cast. I
Yeah.
haven't watched it. I
Me
saw the
neither.
trailer and I was like, it looked terrible. It looked terrible. But I hate when they say like, you see, the women, they can't be funny. It's
Yeah.
it's not possible. I'm just like, no, it's just a bad movie with women. It could also be the same bad movie, just with, I don't know, four dudes, like I don't know, Kevin Hart and like somebody else, like
The
it
Rock.
could, yeah, The
Yeah.
Rock, Kevin Hart, and it could just be as terrible.
Mm.
But and then they were like, you see Hollywood trying to force the women into the movie. Like, no, I mean, just get a good director, get a good actor, and it will be a good movie. Like, I'm very sure like some like stellar actresses are out there, and like it's just about time that things will change, that we get more diverse actors in there, and also more stories to tell from these people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely. Like as an actor, it's like very interesting to see the perception of who people think I am,
Right? Yeah.
which is
It's
like
it's
very like it's and I was looking at someone else who I'm thinking of interviewing. It's just there are so many talented people out there
right. Yeah.
that aren't the same kinds of people. They're just not like being given the chance. And
Yeah.
I'm tired of proving to people that I'm human. Like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a little bit
It's
hard.
it's it's weird. I mean, I can
So
totally
weird.
get it to be discouraged, but I think it's also
Yeah.
so stupid that they're like, I want to see myself. Like, I want to be like, I want to feel like that I
Yeah, because
can
I've
relate
been
to the
relating
character.
to people who don't look like me my whole life.
Exactly. Yeah. But
I've been relating to animals. I relate to Nemo from
right.
Finding
Yeah.
Nemo. He's a
E-
clownfish. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, then there's also the same people who say like, well, I love The Rock. It's like nobody looks like The Rock. Like
yeah,
he's like a Samoan like wrestler guy who crushes tires with his arms. I'm like, can you
yeah.
really relate? Like, really? Like, is this now The Rock is fine, but like this like young brown girl is like too much, like, right? Like, and
Yeah, or like
it's
somebody
what it
like
is.
there's this show that I love, Loose, from the Owl House. I like. people keep saying that only like girls can relate to her and stuff like that, but it's like my little brother has a ton of female role models. I have a bunch of like dudes that I look up to, and like
Yeah,
everybody, like it's when are people just gonna stop being babies and
yeah,
just like realize that we're human? Like
it's so
I don't
weird.
know. It definitely not in my lifetime, but
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I don't know.
sometimes all these like issues are so relatable. Like there's this movie called Love, Simon, where it's about like a homosexual kid coming out, and like it's not my favorite movie, but it's a good movie. And I'm like, yes, I felt the same when asking out a girl. Like it's very relatable. It's
Mhm.
not that I'm like, wow, it's so strange, like this person liking another boy or another man. Like, how could I ever relate to this? This is so strange. Like, it's so stupid. Like, I mean, it's just a girl or a boy exchange. Like, I mean, could you, like, is it really this hard to, like, bend your brain? Like, is it already, like, so difficult?
Yeah, and
I
it's all
don't understand.
learned, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. It's all like learned.
Yeah.
Like I have like a point in my life where like people treated me normally from like the ages of like 3, and then
Right.
it's like gone because they learned from their
It's
parents. That
yeah,
sort of thing.
it's so weird, yeah. And
Yeah.
then we also have like Marvel movies, like, oh, the Hulk was great.
Mm.
Like, did you see like his range of motions with the Hulk, like when he was
Yeah.
like smarts and all? And just like, yeah, you can relate to the Hulk. You can relate to Thor. Those are flying gods and Chris Hemsworth. Like,
Yeah, we're
those
all
are
just stories. It's
yeah,
fine.
right. And they're all like mythical people, and they're like, oh yeah, you can relate to the giant green Hulk monster, but not like the like I don't know, the black actor here, right?
Who influences you right now, and what would you say if you met them, or what would you like to learn from them?
I guess it's I guess the easy answer, which one just comes up right now, is Neil Druckmann from the game The Last of Us Part Two, and it's not that so much that he influences me, but I think it's very interesting to see like he released like The Last of Us, which was like one of the most critically acclaimed video games of all time, and everybody was like expecting this like great sequel. Like it was like anticipated like for years. It was and everyone's like a little bit frightened because they say like, well, why is it called Last of Us Part Two? Like, is it really a continuation of the story? Are we going to have more adventures with the characters we already got used to and fell in love with? And in my opinion, they did something very, very bold. I'm not going to go into details, but I think the notion of like making a sequel and defying expectations is something very brave, in my opinion. And especially it was like the biggest game ever. Like they had like the biggest expectations of all because they made like one of the most critically acclaimed games. So everybody was like, my God, are they going to screw it up? And I think like just the having, I will call it audacity, just like the will or the bravery to go like, this is the story we're going to tell. Yes, we're going to feature almost everything you can imagine, like transgender persons, homosexuality, dealing with grief, bisexuals, like all these issues, like dealing with loss, like rage, like pregnancy, like all these things are in there. And one could say though they feel forced, but in my opinion, they feel incredibly natural in this world. And also the like saying, like sort of saying, screw you, like this is our story, this is my story that I have in mind, and if you like it, fine, great, I really enjoy that you like it, but if you don't, this is not up for you then. Like like a famous comedian once said like, it sort of feels like when people say, well, I didn't like it, so I need to tell you that it was horrible. It feels like somebody going into like a concert of Green Day or something, and then like saying, well, this sucks. Like, this is all horrible. Like, this is shit. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to curse. Like, this is terrible. You can edit it out. Like, this is all terrible. Like, and they're like, nobody asked for your opinion. This is a concert of Green Day. Like, why would you tell this to them? So it's fine that people don't like things, but it's also really, really brave of them to not make the safe choices of like, well, people like this, so we're gonna make it just again, and people will love it again. More like a, well, you like this, you don't gonna like this for sure, but this is part of the story, and I'm going to do it, and I'm not afraid of changing things up. And if you are afraid of, I don't know, having like a very explicit scene on screen, well, it's not for you. And I really like that, especially from like a person. And I guess I have to give like some kudos to Sony that they have like this creative freedom, but just like being this bold and not being discouraged by all the hate of like saying, well, yeah, like, you destroyed the franchise, you ruined everything. Because, well, the game, like maybe to cut it short a bit, the game released with stellar reviews and people loved it. A very vocal minority hates it and say it's the worst game ever. But he still stands tall and says, well, that's just my story and I don't care. And people seem to love it. And I much rather look at the people who love it than give into the hatred of fans. So this is something really encouraging to me, just like being able to be like this bold and also be this like convinced of yourself in like the thing you and the team does.
What never fails to ignite passion in your work?
What never fails to ignite passion in my work? I guess, I mean, it's not happened often so far, but sometimes I still think about like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I can say this. So when I reached out to Dave again for the second interview, because I thought it was timely because they just released Little Nightmares 2, I said like, well, hey Dave, just a question. Would you like to come onto the show again, promoting your game, like, you know, talking about it? I'm not sure if you liked the first episode. Like, oh, you know, and then he replied to me. He was like, you know, funny thing you ask, because I just re-listened to the episode we did, and I was like, wow, like I would have never imagined any sane person to go back to the interview I did with them and listen to it. You know, I always imagine that they just, you know, tell them that it's out. They skim through it. Well, good, fine. And then they was like, but it was like months later. And he was like, well, you know, just funny enough, I re-listened it because I thought it was one of the better interviews I did. And I was just like, wow. That was like, the feeling was just like, wow. And it was just one person. So it was just like, wow, this is just so inspiring to see like people care about this stuff. And I guess this is just something, you know, like just seeing somebody, a random comment or something saying like, hey, I just stumbled upon this podcast and it was really good. I think this will never stop to be, I guess I really hope it won't stop to make me feel proud of the things I did.
When are you happiest when you're making something? Like what part of the process is that? Because I know you hate editing, so.
Oh yeah. I guess the happiest is the podcast. I guess because it's just sort of, you have the excuse of like not paying attention, but it's more like you don't need to dig through old interviews anymore, and it's all culminated in this moment, in this interview. And I guess this is where I'm happiest, just like getting to sit down with the person, trying to throw curveballs at them, trying to impress them with my research. And yeah, this is, I guess, the moment where I think, or another one is when I get the reply of like, let's do this. Another moment,
Yeah.
just manually refreshing like a totally normal person, refreshing the emails inbox, and just like, did they reply? Like, yeah, nothing feels better. It's also very interesting because I hate nothing more than writing the emails, because I'm always trying to sound like, sort of like it's cool, but you know,
Yeah.
it's not that cool. You know, it's more like but you're like, well, like, this is my life's work. Like you always try to not sound like that. Like, I really need this in my life. Please say yes. So I hate sending it, writing it and everything. But then the reply was like, yeah, that sounds great. Actually, it sounds really cool. Let's do this. I'm just like, yes, it worked. So this is like one of the other moments of like, yes, that's cool.
Yeah, writing emails is hard. I've been doing writing professional emails. I've been doing it since I was like 12 years old, so I definitely like have a system now, but oh my God, what a learning curve.
Right, yeah.
I've definitely embarrassed myself in front of some very important people before.
Oh yeah. I think I have quite a funny story of one of my friends who applied to a company, and then he sort of like copy pasted it, and he just changed a few things, and then he was like, well, looking for, like, I always, like when I was young, I always dreamed working for this car company. It was like, I don't know, let's just say Tesla. I always dreamed working for Tesla. And then And then he writes all the stuff about like Tesla and all the stuff. Like when he was young, he was looking up to Elon Musk and all the stuff. And then press send. And then like, I don't know, a week later, he got the reply. It was like, yeah, thanks. But this is Daimler. Like this is Mercedes. like
Oh my God, that's
great
the
that you
nightmare. Oh my God.
Like, great that you like Tesla, but we're not making them. Like, we're a totally different company. And just like something, you know, I always feel a bit afraid of like, this is the reason I always double check, triple check the emails of like, okay, his name is Dave. He worked for Tarser Studios and they worked on, what was it called? Pikmin? Oh no, it was Little Nightmares. So I was like, okay, trying to edit it out. So this was like something, trying to be consistent with everything.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I totally relate to that. What are your strengths and weaknesses in your work, you think?
I guess my weakness would be dealing with everything other than the podcast. Like, you know, doing the social media stuff, editing the stuff. And I guess this is funny because this is how companies work. So
yes, yeah, I know.
it's true, right? Because like it would be best just to focus on the one thing that you're doing great instead of doing everything else. So this is the reason why, I don't know, companies outsource cleaning duties or shipping duties or all the stuff. Like, I don't know, like Apple, for example, I'm very sure they should only focus on innovating stuff and coming up with the ideas and designing it. That's the reason they don't, I mean, one of the reasons, not wanting going too much into detail, but this is the reason they let them produce somewhere else, because, well, on one hand it's cheaper, but on the other hand it's not their expertise. So, and this is the same for me, I guess, you know, if I could, I would only work on the coming up with questions and interviewing people. But since I'm not that famous or have like the disposable income of like hiring an editor, I guess I have to do everything. So the best part, I guess, is me doing the interviews, coming up with questions, and finding the guests. The worst part, everything surrounding that, like social media and posting it and trying to come up with like witty or yeah, I guess social media in general. It's just like a huge enigma to me. Like when to use hashtags, how many hashtags are ideal, when to post, do you repost? Do you focus on like an American audience? Do you post at midnight in German time? How much reposting is allowed? Should you focus on 60-minute interviews or long? Should you upload twice a month? It's like, oh, you know, like how am I to know? Like who knows this stuff? So
yeah, because also the algorithm's changing so much too.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Like most people who like have made it big just got shouted up by like a celebrity, and then they keep the momentum going. It's
right.
Like,
yeah. Exactly.
Whatever.
Right.
I have a lot of like spite for it. Yeah.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Is there a project or something that you're putting off because of fear?
I mean, sort of. I mean, like I already mentioned the time where I was unemployed for a year, and I was this close. It's funny how things turned out, because I was at the point I was at the point of like not giving up, but I was like, all right, then you're not going to hire me, then I'm going to do it myself, and I hire myself. So I wanted you see, like it's funny because like I was this close about thinking of starting a restaurant. Like not like, I mean, it sounds crazy, but not really, because I have like very high standards for myself. So I was always like, well, I know these like famous chefs and they never thought about opening a restaurant up until they did like 10 years of stuff. But then there are other people who just like, well, you know, I just grabbed some pens and started a restaurant, I guess, you know? And then I was like, well, maybe I should look into this. Like if nobody's hiring me, then maybe I should just start the restaurant idea, like, because I do like to cook quite a lot. And I guess I also have the passion or the drive or the thinking behind a good restaurant, like coming up with great recipes or doing something or trying to use local products and all this stuff like people tell you about. And but it never worked out because, of course, I was afraid. I mean, who's not afraid of like taking up like lots of thousands of dollars and saying like, well, I don't have any restaurant expertise, so I'm just pretending I'm a chef now and just, you know, I guess I'm now a restaurant owner. And funny thing, because the pandemic happened, and I sometimes ask my friend, because he was like one of the people I wanted to get involved. I was like, I have a question. Like, back in the day where we thought about, like, I told you about the idea of me opening up a restaurant, and then there were many restaurants closing because they didn't adopt quickly enough to like delivery and stuff, which is fine. I'm not blaming them. But I was asking him, like, do you think we would still be around? Do you think we could have adapted quickly? And do you think we would be successful in what we're doing? And he was like, I guess we would have adapted. I'm quite sure we would have. But it's such an interesting question. So I guess I sort of postponed my restaurant idea because I got hired. I'm very grateful for that. And but it's not like something I'm like, well, I wish I could do it, but I'm not doing it. It's more like a sort of necessity thing. It's like, yes, I'm passionate about it, but I'm quite a bit of afraid of screwing up, because like, why would I start a restaurant with no restaurant expertise and no cooking expertise and not being a chef for like 10 years? So, I mean, sounds a bit scary and crazy to me, but it's not like that crazy. And I'm not like that crazy about the idea that I really feel regret. I'm like, damn it, I wish I could have followed through. So a little bit of a non-answer here for me.
Is there anyone that you wish you could like collaborate with in the future?
Collaborate in like a podcasting project, or like a general
in
project?
Anything. I wanted to see what you came up with. Yeah.
Oh, like I mean, it's sort of related to the art answer. I was like, there's this one artist who's also in the gaming industry. His name is Yoji Shinkawa, who is the character designer of almost all, I think, every work Hideo Kojima worked on, who is like a very famous game developer, like very famous. And he's from Japan, but he only releases like a couple of pieces of artwork once every couple of years, and they're always related to the company. Wow. And I wish I could get like I wish I could collaborate with them and say, like, give me I would take anything. Give me your thrown away sketches. Give me like something. I would release it into like an art book, or like a poster, like a print, something. Mm-hmm. But I wish people, like, I wish I could see like some of the stuff he just scribbled around and did, and also some of like his older stuff, like getting it on like a high quality piece of paper and printing it out and having it limited, having it open edition, something like that would be like, I would be like, yes, like somebody should do that. Like, I mean, he could do it with anyone, but since nobody's asked, or like maybe the people are asking, very likely, but since he hasn't agreed yet, why not with me? I have zero experience, I'm as good as a chef, as a poster director, but that's me. And there was also another company, but it could be that I'm potentially collaborating with them in the future on the project. So I can't name them because it might happen in the future. So who knows?
Oh, cool. Well, I'm excited for that if that ever happens.
Yeah.
What advice would your older self give you now? Let's pretend like your podcast is like super successful. Everybody and like literally everybody listens to it or something like that. What would your older self, what advice would they have for you right now?
Let me think. How would I look? Would I be like in a cool top hat with like a monocle and like
I don't know. What do
like
famous people do?
They look all like this. They look all like this. Totally. Yeah. Like they all have like,
I'm thinking of like Benedict Cumberbatch with the top hat and the monocles.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Like
everyone
looks like
right?
this. Yeah. The Rock also looks like this. Like every time in the gym he looks like this. So yeah, I guess I would come to myself and say like, well, just keep doing it. It will be fine. I guess they will say, it will be fine. It's fine that you're not having success right now. It's fine that you're doing it just for fun. It's there isn't any pressure or anything that needs to come out of this. It's like, even if I just stop now, would be something I did, something I could look back to and say, I did this. Maybe I could say, well, this was a phase. Like, this was a phase of mine, of the podcasting phase, the podcasting arc. But I think I would probably say to myself, it's all fine. It worked out. And even though you only have 100 subscribers right now. Hey, 100 more than you started. And that's also something.
That's really good advice. Now I'm gonna flip that around. What advice would you give that older self? What do you think he forgot?
Dudes, what's up with the outfit? Don't you know how to dress anymore?
That's funny.
No, I guess it would be more like, oh, so you really became corporate after all. Like, oh, you're asking the regular questions now. So, oh, you made it now. No, I guess I would just say, hey, I hope you still enjoy it. Like, do you really enjoy it still, or is it more like a, it's fine to be like on an episode where you feel like a little bit down, like, but is the majority of your time you spend on this still worth it? Like, do you feel any sort of pleasure anymore? And if not, why are you still doing it? Like, why would you waste your time with this if you could do just something else that brings you more joy?
What are you most excited about for the future of the industry?
I mean, it's the stuff that's, some of the stuff that it's interesting because most of the big creators all grew up with the same stuff. Like, they all grew up with Mario. Like not everyone, but I mean a vast majority. But it's so interesting to see creators like, for example, Toby Fox. He's the creator of Undertale, which is a hugely big game. Like, it was so big.
Yeah.
It skyrocketed so well. And he's younger than a lot of the other creators, and he was influenced by a game called Earthbound, which I never played. And it's so interesting because like all the people who played Earthbound say, man, he just created another Earthbound and he made it his own. It's incredible. But I was like, what is Earthbound and how amazing is Undertale? And it's cool to see like the people, like, I mean, like I said, I admire Neil Druckmann and all the people who are still big in the industry, who grew up with the games, who shaped the industry. But it's so interesting to see the people who are just maybe saying like one day saying, yeah, sorry, I never played any Mario game or a Zelda game. Like, why would I? Like, I played Fortnite and this was my game. And, people like to meme on Fortnite and I don't like the game, but it's fine. People enjoyed it. And so if a person, it gets inspired by Fortnite to say like, well, I want to make a Fortnite with story or something, or I want to make the next Fortnite with, I don't know, talking animals. Who cares? I want to see that. I want to see the people who grew up in the industry not being all influenced by the same creators, same works, and also the diversity to see like, yeah, seeing like there's like this, seeing like smaller creators from Japan or from China, like more people having the resources, the accessibility. Like, I think, yes, some of the smaller games came out of Sweden or something. They're like so cool to see like how they became influenced by the stuff, and not being like the typical stuff. Like, everybody will give you the same answers often. Yeah, I played Mario, I played Zelda. Have you heard of Tetris? I'm like, sure, yeah. But the people who are just like new to the scene, what do they bring to the table? And maybe they will be influenced by just like, yeah, like for example, I can't wait to see like a game like The Last of Us Part 2, which is so culturally diverse. And then the people who say like, well, funny thing, those two games were my first games and they are now 30. So like maybe in 30 years to see them like, yeah, those were the games I grew up with. Like, I can't, like, I still have like in my memory, like still these like images of the characters and stuff. And they will talk about this like we talk about my first Pokemon game or something, or like catching a Pikachu and not knowing how the game works. Or like for example, with me, there was like some English words in there. And I was like, what does item mean? Like, item? Like, what is this? Or it's like, and then my mom was like, no, this is item. And I'm just like, what is an item? Like, what is this word? Like, it's not German. So I'm like, what does it even mean? Like, something like this, like these like weird quirks of like a person of like maybe sometimes playing a game and they're like, yeah, this was so weird. Like, I grew up with that and now I'm making them. So this is something I really think it's interesting about. Same with movies, people will always tell like, oh, Tarantino inspired me or something.
Yeah,
it's like, I want to see the people who are inspired by Barry Jenkins, like who made Moonlight or something. Those are like the people that are like, wow, Barry Jenkins, that's like a name. Crazy. Not like Scorsese or stuff,
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes I feel like a fake animation person because I love animation. I do love
Right.
watching movies, but my favorite things are not animated things. I'm much more influenced by like music than I
Oh,
am
that's
like
awesome.
music and video games than I am like animation. So it's
Oh,
very
that's
interesting
awesome.
to see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay.
Party people.
Woo! Okay. What is something that you thought was scary, but you were able to overcome or get through?
Yeah, I guess it's all related to, I only talk about the same stuff, but it's all related to this, just giving presentations, like podcasting. Like it's just very scary in the beginning. Like maybe not you, but me, like speaking not my native language. Like I'm very good in English, I would say, not to toot my horn too much, but I think I'm pretty good with English, but still like not being sure if the English is good enough. What is it like? What happens if they say something weird, or do I pronounce the word? I don't know. Do I pronounce the words correctly? Like all the stuff, or like the presentation stuff. I am representing me or my friends, or do I, in like at Gamescom, I represent my podcast. So how do I come across? I didn't think I would be like a good presenter at all, but then I sort of realized that I guess this is something that is good, but I needed to figure out how I would give my own presentation. So back in the day, I saw all these people with like the piece of paper were like, today is the day I give this speech about global warming. And then I sort of realized, I don't know, I just have like all this like text in my head, and it's sort of scrambled around, and I only need like a few buzzwords like global warming, melting ice, sun, idiot people. And then I could tell the whole story. And I didn't need to have like a pre-written text or anything. And I, like I said in the last episode and the last interview we did together, was like, yeah, I need to have like this one terrible run of like giving the presentation, and people looking at me funny. We're like, is he really the person that should represent us? And then they give me the feedback, and then I implement it. The next time, I don't need any second go, but then the next time is the final call. I will put it up, then I will put in the implementation, like everything they told me will be in there, and then I would just have like a round presentation. Even though I might stumble 1-2 times, but I think the overall presentation will be much more free flow. And with the podcast, it's the same. Like, yes, I have the questions written down, and I sort of sometimes struggle with the questions that I have to come up. We got like sometimes the stuff we have during our conversation, but in the end, it's just, yeah, I never thought it would be quite good at that. And when people say like questions were good, you were good, and yeah, people like you who say, yeah, your stuff is thoughtful and your questions are good, I'm just like, wow, I did not expect that. I would expect more people to be like, yeah, not sure about that, buddy. Like, yeah, I already wasted an hour. No thanks to another one of these. Like, those were like really not good. So, I guess this is the one thing I was surprised I would be good at. And I guess to some extent cooking, because whoever knows that you're good at cooking, like who knows, like
Yeah,
who
until
starts,
you
like,
try,
because you
definitely.
learn it, like you just learn it by doing it, and nobody would say like, oh, I guess I'm a good cook. It's more like you do all the stuff, and then you sort of like realize, oh, I guess this is something that not everybody does the same as I do, or watch like 50 cooking videos a day or something. So so this is also something I didn't think, like, because nobody thinks about being good at a cooking things, but then you sort of realize, oh, I guess I am just good.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being here. You're
Thank
awesome.
you. You're awesome.
Thank you. I want to know like your contact info, where people can find you, your
Sure.
podcasts, yeah, that stuff.
Yeah, you can donate. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
would like $10 million,
Yes.
please, right
Yes.
here.
Yes. This is my bank account. I am in.
Here's my
No.
address in case you want to
Right.
stop by.
Right. Exactly. Social security number is also
Oh
here in
yeah.
case you need those. Yeah. So, like I said, my name is Dorian, and I run a podcast called You, Me, and the Industry. Yeah, the podcast is on Twitter and on Instagram at You, Me, Industry, and yeah, we're also on Facebook. For some reason, not sure why, because there's not much engagement there so far, but
I've never touched. I stopped touching Facebook like 5 years
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good for you. Good for you.
But me too. But like, if somebody notices it, great. If not, well, no harm done. And yeah, I do these interviews with people from the games industry. Doesn't matter how big or small or new to the industry they are. In my opinion, everybody who is featured there is part of the industry. And if you're a fan of the show or want to become a fan, you can find the show on like the typical podcast services like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon Music and everything, basically everything. Also the website, you can find the website on my socials like Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to follow me personally on Instagram or on Twitter, I am Dorian Chow on Instagram and on Twitter. And you can, I guess, see my weird pictures and my weird opinions on mostly wrong opinions about stuff.
I love the pause. All right, awesome. Any last thoughts before we go?
No, I guess thank you so much for having me on your show. I guess it's really lovely to see up and coming artists and seeing all the crazy stuff that you have going on. Like, it's also nice to see, like, I can never expect the next content you're going to upload. It's more like, this is now an audition for the Owl House. And just like, I never heard about the Owl House, but this is great. And then they're like, this is me skateboarding. And the next one is like, I'm giving a graduation speech. I'm just like, wow, like, calm down, like so many ideas, like so much going out. It's like you can't contain it. It's so great to see like such a creative and passionate person. So be sure to follow Nicole on all the socials and the art channel and the personal channel. So you won't regret it. It's very interesting to see all like the crazy stuff that's out there. And hopefully I can see you in the future in like animation or like, being a voice actress or like actress, nothing wrong there. And also voice actors are also actors.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I got confused there. Thank you. I don't even have to promote myself now. I'll just hire you on every video. Thank you very much.
I mean, you can shout out the socials, like
yeah, sure. Right. Socials all down there or in the end card, whatever Future Nicole decides to do. Hi, Future Nicole. Okay. All right, awesome. Now we're just gonna wave bye to the audience. Bye, guys.
Bye.